She's here. The time for convening has arrived. I'd like to welcome everybody to this night's series of meetings. We're starting with our work session. The first item on the work session is review of crash findings for the Safe Streets for Sandy Springs Safety Action Plan. Mr. Martin.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Tonight, the first in what should be about 3 presentations to you all as we work through this year to develop a safety action plan for the city of Sandy Springs. If you recollect, about a year ago, we received a safety planning grant as a part of the Safe Streets for All implementation program in anticipation of a future implementation program with that. Tonight, I'd like to ask Mr. Nathan Gomez with our Gresham Smith and Partners team to talk to you about crash inventory, crash history, and findings from that as he then begins to develop for the entire city a framework for future crash analysis and the baseline for a safety action plan for the city of Sandy Springs. Is that Nathan?
Thanks, Marty. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thanks for this opportunity to come back again and talk to you about the development of the Safety Action Plan. We'll quickly go through our agenda today with an overview. Main agenda is really talk about the crash findings today. We'll touch on some equity analysis, the engagement activities that we are planning to go through, the plan development, also touch on the next steps when we're going to come back to this group in the future. For the overview, the city already has a good framework for safety. The transportation master plan developed, also some of the resolutions adopted by this council for priorities for 2024, and also the resolution for the development of the safety action plan really has a framework for us to then go on and develop the safety action plan to reduce the fatalities and severe injuries in the city. This plan is predominantly funded by the SS4A grants from the bipartisan infrastructure law. With that, we are using the safe system approach to develop this. Essentially, what that means is we are going to use all 5 systems of the roadway network to attack this problem of fatalities and severe injuries. We acknowledge that humans do make mistakes, and when those make mistakes, it's upon us to make sure that those mistakes don't lead to deaths or severe injuries. And the acknowledgement really starts with asserting that deaths and serious injuries are unacceptable. So on the slide, you see the 6 different principles of the safe system approach. That humans make mistakes, humans are vulnerable, the responsibility is shared between all the systems, and then we have to attack safety in a proactive manner and in a redundant manner. Several objectives for the safety action plan. We are developing a crash database. A data-based approach is essential for the development of this plan. We'll be developing something called a high injury network to show where the fatal crashes and serious injury crashes are concentrated within the city. We'll be developing a framework for approaching safety, and we'll be coming back to you all with goals and metrics for the city to adopt as we move forward. Equity and approaching this plan from an equity lens is important. Looking at the underserved communities that are disproportionately affected by these kind of crashes is key for us. And we'll also be developing projects and strategies as we go through the development of the plan. It'll also have an implementation program and metrics of how to monitor the safety and how to monitor these projects as they're developed. Just to touch quickly on schedule for this, our intent is to have a draft plan completed by end of October, go to public right after that, and get ready for council adoption in early January. We are committed to sending this to Federal Highway towards the end of or beginning of June. Those are some of the dates that we have for this plan development. Right now, we are substantially complete with analysis, and we'll be shortly getting into development of projects and strategies. Through this process, we'll be coming back to council 2 more times, one after we have developed our projects and strategies, and also later to adopt the plan in January. So we'll be going through a lot of numbers in the crash histories portion. We are looking at crashes between 2018 and 2022. There were about 27,503 total crashes within all roadways, public roadways within the city. One way to think about that is annually, this all adds up to a total comprehensive crash cost of $650 million. That includes the economic cost and also the monetized pain and suffering costs for the individuals. And I think you all know the main areas where these crashes are concentrated is 285, 400, Roswell Road, and some of the other roadways listed in the slide. And this chart kind of tells you where these crashes are concentrated. We're looking at all crashes within the city. About 50% of the crashes are on 400 or 285. About a third of the crashes are actually on Roswell Road, and then the remaining third is actually on Roswell Road. And there's also a sliver of Stero 140 within the city, which has some crashes. And then specifically for this plan, we are also really concentrating on the fatal crashes and also those serious injury crashes. The serious injury crashes are those that really changes a person's life. Though they may not be killed, they are not able to live their life like they would have if not for that particular crash. We are looking at the number of crashes several different ways. This is one way to look at the number of crashes within Sandy Springs to benchmark what we have in front of us. So in Sandy Springs, per year, about 5,000 crashes per 100,000 persons living in the city. And then compared to Dunwoody and Roswell, you can see the numbers. We are much higher in Sandy Springs, mainly because there's a lengthier portion of 285 and 400 within the city. So we are also then looking at, okay, how does that look if we take out the 285 and 400 crashes? From that lens, we are comparable to Roswell and Dunwoody, and you can see the neighboring jurisdiction of Dunwoody is still higher because one of the reasons being Sandy Springs does have a long segment of Roswell Road where we know a lot of crashes do happen, and therefore, if we do exclude 285 and 400, you still have about 2,600 crashes per 100,000 people living in Sandy Springs every year. Like I said, fatal and serious injury crashes are really the focus of this plan. There were about 259 reported fatal or severe injury crashes that happened inside the city, which includes both Stero 400 and 285. Then if we kind of scale back into state routes or city-owned streets, that's about 122 fatal and severe injury crashes. The time is really now to look at, to develop a safety action plan and look at this plan in detail because from a crash history standpoint, if we look at the 5-year period before our analysis period, which is 2018 through 2022, so if we look at the 2013 through 2017, there's about a 50% increase in fatal and severe injury crashes. So really now is the time to start looking at the plan and coming up with projects and strategies to address that. A big part of fatal and severe injury crashes are the crashes that involve what we are calling vulnerable roadway users. Those are your pedestrians, bicyclists, or anybody who uses a conveyance mechanism other than a motor vehicle. There were about 38 bicycle crashes, 130 pedestrian crashes. We're looking at each individual crash to understand where it happened, why it happened, so that we can come up with plans and projects to address those. Speaking about vulnerable roadway user crashes, notably it is along Roswell Road or transit routes or where there is a mix of uses along the roadway. I mentioned before, one of the key things that we are developing is a high injury network to come up with projects and strategies. If we just look at the city and state route crashes that occurred on city and state routes, this is your high injury network. You can see most of that is concentrated along Roswell Road. You do have a couple of segments along Dunwoody Place, Northridge Road, Abernathy. These are all well known, and probably you would agree these are all the locations that you would think the crashes are. But the data does show this is where you need to pay most of your attention addressing crashes. Similarly, we are also looking at the high injury intersections, looking at the crashes that occurred on the city and state routes. Similar to the previous slide, most of these intersections are along Roswell Road. There are a few along Northridge Road, Johnson's Ferry, and also a few along Hammond Drive, and also the Northridge Road of Roberts Drive and 400 Rams. A key element to this is looking at how the crashes are happening in Sandy Springs compared to some of the neighboring jurisdictions. This is also a work in progress, comparing to say Dunwoody and Roswell, for example. But initial findings are that distracted driving, impaired driving, are a big concern, and also large truck-related crashes are also a concern because of really 285 and 400 related crashes in the city. Like I mentioned before, this plan is funded in part by a grant from the SS4A by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. A key lens of that is to make sure that this analysis and the plan development of this plan happens with a focus on equity, which means that we need to pay especially attention to the crashes that happened within the areas which are underrepresented. Otherwise, there are 5 key census tracts within Sandy Springs which are of interest to us from that standpoint. The areas of persistent poverty or the historically disadvantaged communities within Sandy Springs are the ones which are highlighted. And there are some statistics on the slide just to illustrate the fact that we are really paying attention to the crashes that happen within those regions. And when we move forward in developing the plans and projects, the prioritization of those projects will definitely take into account the equity lens, and also will make sure that that equity plays a role in how those projects are programmed, how those projects are rolled out. Another key piece or the requirement of developing this plan based on SS4A grant is to have a robust engagement activity throughout the plan development. We have a safety task force comprised of several representatives from several city departments. This safety task force provides the planning structure in developing this plan to make sure the actual recommendations, implementations are happening in a way that needs to happen per SS4A grant requirements. The safety task force functions as an advisory board for us. We have met twice. We will be meeting twice more through the development of this plan. One we have already scheduled next in August 1st and also in mid-October to present some of the remaining analysis and also those plans and projects. We're also talking with several focus groups to inform the plan development, including the bicycle pedestrian transit folks, the transit equity folks, the regional transportation partners, the business community within the city, healthcare and health-related advocates, and also schools and youth population. The last 2 groups we are still planning to meet with them. One is scheduled and one is yet to be scheduled. We wanted to be slightly after school closure, so that is in the works. But some of the data that, or what we've heard from these groups so far is about crosswalks, sidewalks. Some of the neighboring jurisdictions have developed a Vision Zero goal or a safety goal for the city, and then we heard about setting speed limits and speeding within these jurisdictions. We also heard about some organizations wanting to help and being engaged in this plan development process. We had an online platform to get feedback directly from the public, which went from May 1st through June 15th. Last I checked, when we closed it, there was more than about 225 online comments. Most of them concentrated along Abernathy Road, Roswell, Johnson's Ferry, and Hammond Drive. Some of the themes that came through was the lack of bicycle or pedestrian facilities, intersection conflicts and ability to turn safely at intersections. Speeding came through, visibility at driveways, access and egress issues at commercial developments or major shopping centers, lack of clear signage along the roadways. Those are some of the initial findings from those survey. We did attend, and we had a booth at the May 18th Farmers Market. We were able to talk to more than almost 150 people. We had good participation. A lot of the folks were interested in having more sidewalks, crossing opportunities, better intersections, visibility improvements, such as, you can see the reflective pavement markings and so on and so forth. I want to conclude with the next steps. Like I mentioned, this is one of the 3 meetings that we are engaging the council. This point, we are almost complete with our analysis. We'll be coming back when we are ready to present the projects and strategies, and also ask for input into goals and metrics. And then finally, in January of next year or February next year, we want the council to adopt. So that will be the 3rd time we'll be coming to you. But the next steps for us is developing those projects and policy recommendations, developing the goals and metrics, and listed there are some examples that we have from neighboring jurisdictions. The Atlanta Regional Commission adopted or developed a regional safety strategy, which is a similar plan, and then Cobb County, Dunwoody, City of Atlanta, and several jurisdictions within Georgia has developed similar planning documents. And then we're also planning on having an open house towards the end of August, and we have just started working towards that. I believe that is my last slide, and with that, try to answer any questions.
Right. Any questions? Mr. DiGiulio.
Sir, everything I have been reading about safety plans and crash statistics, etc., keep emphasizing distracted driving. Now, I noticed in your presentation you only mentioned distracted driving once, because I was looking for that. And I noticed when you came into the different areas that you're going to, you never mentioned it at all.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if everybody realizes, and we all see people when we're driving. I mean, there's nothing more aggravating than driving, seeing the person in the car next to you on the phone. Sometimes you wish I had a badge so I could stop this person and knock them on the head and say, hey, pay attention to what you're doing on there. What's your plan on this action plan, this safety action plan, to deal with distracted driving? Because from what I understand and when I read, that's the biggest problem we have out there right now.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks for that. We did find distracted driving is a reason for a lot of the crashes. It is overrepresented within the crashes that happen in Sandy Springs. The approach that we are taking within this plan is a safety management process which has multiple lenses, not just engineering, but it also has enforcement, in addition to some of the other E's that you might hear, emergency response and so on and so forth. So enforcement is part of this, and as we are developing the plan, like I mentioned before, the safety task force, we do have representation from the law enforcement side and the public safety side. The plans and projects that we'll develop and the strategies that we develop will definitely have ways that we can address the distracted driving. That could be handled from the enforcement side. Some could be handled from the engineering side. But right now, I don't have answers of how specifically we'll address those, because we need to get into the location of those crashes where they're happening, even though it could be all over the city. But we will have strategies that can address specifically the distracted driving piece of it, because it is, from the data that we know, it is overrepresented in the crashes.
Ms. Mueller.
So I have a couple of 3 questions. So the first one has to do with the system that's being built to collect the crash data. is that going to be a custom proprietary built system, or will that be a commercial off-the-shelf product?
The crash database that we're working off of, it originates from law enforcement within the city. They are obligated to report the crash information to the state. The state puts it into a database and then disseminates that information to everybody within, well, not everybody, I guess the consultant community, engineers and folks working in the safety area. So it is a platform which is available to practitioners. It is not proprietary. Any project that the city initiates will have access to, any project team will have access to that same data. And the data that we are developing is really an Excel database that we are cleaning up from what we have from the state. And then we'll be transferring that to the city for their use. And it'll be useful for, not only for this plan, but for any projects.
Okay, it sounded like we're not building, we're just taking the data and we're going to manipulate the data that's already available.
Right.
Perfect. And then I think on one of the slides it said that you're focusing on this, one reason because it's 50% increase since the last time the study was done. Do you have any idea of the percentage increase in the traffic volumes? I mean, has that gone up as well, or?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah. I just want to clarify that. So it's from the same crash database that we are getting that trend. We don't specifically have a. Right now, I don't have with me the amount of traffic that has increased in the same years, but that's something that we can easily find and can make that available in the reporting that we do, or specifically we can get that information back to you.
It's just, that would be an interesting data point to see,
for sure.
How are they going?
Yeah.
And then on your stakeholder list that you had there,
Yep.
who's involved from the neighborhoods? Because I saw businesses and different groups, but I didn't specifically see neighborhoods, or are they smattered throughout?
Yeah, one of the meetings that we have coming up does have a couple of neighborhood folks involved. I don't have the name in front of me.
I don't need the names. I just want to make sure that we also have neighborhoods.
Absolutely,
There's some advocates for the neighborhoods who are.
There is a neighborhood president who will be involved in that, and there is also another person who will be invited to a stakeholder or a focus group meeting. So neighborhoods are definitely involved in this process.
Thank you very much.
Any others? Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. A couple things struck me as you're going through this. When you include 285 and 400 interstate crashes, it's my opinion it's incorrect to say that's the number of crashes for 100,000 people. There's 500,000 people that drive through 285 and 400. So those numbers could really be presented as 5,000 per 500,000 people, because that's really more reflective of that. I like the fact that you pulled them out. It's also important that we separate them, because we have virtually no power over the traffic in 285 and 400, or limited power. We do speeding tickets and stuff like that, but in truth, the volume is just much different than the neighborhood streets and the neighborhood accidents that we have. So please separate those. Okay?
Yes. And I'll just add, we are looking at all the crashes within the city, but to your point, the level of control the city has in realizing changes on those two streets may be different than city-owned streets. So from the point of developing plans and strategies, we are focusing on city streets plus Roswell Road and the sliver of 140, Stero 140 within the city. But we also want to have a complete picture of what is happening on 285 and 400. So in the meetings that the city staff has, say for example with GDOT, they can bring that to them and say, hey, this is what has been documented and reported by the crash data. Let's see what we can do to address these. So we're looking at all crashes, but to your point, that is well taken. The plan development will focus mainly on where the city can make most change.
That's perfect. Thank you. So I got a couple others. Your crash data from 18, is it 18 to 22?
Correct.
You had 2 years in there where we had COVID.
Right.
So we have crashed. If we're averaging the 2 years before COVID and the 2 years when we're in the thick of COVID, I don't want to be making decisions based on those two radically different scenarios. As you remember, during the years of COVID, especially initially, there was nobody driving.
Yeah.
So my guess is the crashes were probably down because we had 1/10 of people driving.
Yeah.
So let's make sure we're clear on before and after COVID.
Sure.
And I'm not too sure how you separate that. But anyway, the point is,
Right.
there's a dramatic difference in traffic in the 2 years before and the 2 years during. So let's not forget that.
Yeah. Yes.
And then the final thing is, we have a huge project that is now coming to completion, at least I hope, after 8 or 10 years, 285 and 400 collector-distributor projects. The gazillions of dollars that were spent on that intersection is to improve safety as well as improve mobility and, speed and stuff like that. So I also want to make sure that you guys figure out how to address the impact of 285 and 400, so we're not making decisions based on situations that are no longer as present once the highways are finished.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the COVID aspect, I think, is important.
Yeah.
And then the before and after 285, 400 project is completed. Let's at least recognize that and
Yes.
not go down a path that doesn't make any sense because the conditions are so dramatically changed
Right.
before and after. And then, yep, that's all I've got. Thank you,
All
Mayor.
right. Anybody else? All right. Dr. Kelly.
Thank you. Quick question about the VRUs. Do we know how we're trending? So like you did a comparison, I think, on one of the slides where you showed the 50%. How are we trending specifically with crashes that involve vulnerable
Roadway users.
roadway users?
Yeah. And it'll be very similar to that 50% increase in fatal and severe injury crashes, because any crash that involves a vulnerable roadway user is most likely to tend towards a fatality or a severe injury. I think we just know that because they don't have the protection that other motorists have with the amount of steel around them. So vulnerable roadway users, if they're involved in a crash, that crash is going to tend to at a higher severity level. So therefore, the same trend that we saw in the fatality or fatal crashes and severe injury crashes, we'll most likely see in the vulnerable roadway users. I don't have that statistic right in front of me today, but that's something that we can easily generate and pull that same information and can be made available for sure.
What resources that we've already invested in, studies that we've already done as a city, like which of those will you be informed by, or all of them, or for example, we did a North End safety analysis. We did a Roswell Road access management. Or is that going to feed into?
So the plan development and the project development and strategies that we developed as part of this plan will reference all the planning documents that has come so far, including the Roswell Road access management plan, the North End safety plan, and also some of the other projects that have been completed in the area. So this just happens to be the first safety action plan that we have developed and the city is developing, but it is going to build on some of the plans which have already been done. In other words, this is the first safety action plan in the true sense of the word, but it's going to be based on some of the planning which has already been done.
Okay. Are you all going to be able to specifically pinpoint crashes that involve construction itself, like some of the construction-related crashes?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just curious about how that impacted the data. And to kind of piggyback on Councilman Paulson's point, we have done projects over the past, 3 years, and I am curious about the impact of some of those projects. So you showed like a list of city intersections, and we've done some interventions,
Right.
and I definitely would like to see how we plan to assess the impact of those.
Yeah, and we in that list of high injury intersections, there were Roswell Road and Clifford Carpenter. There were Roswell Road and Glenridge and Roswell Road and Abernathy. They all underwent some improvements in the recent past. We have that data, the before and after data. Technically speaking, to get a a statistically significant inference from any of those. We need a little bit more
We have to
after
wait.
data,
We
but
have to wait.
we have some initial thoughts on the crash incidents at those intersections. Like, for example, I was looking at Clifford Carpenter. We saw about a 25% reduction in crashes before and after, about 50% reduction in Glen Ridge, and about 15% at Abernathy. Now, again, I think, like I said, we would like to have more after data to solidify some of those findings at a statistical significance level, but we have that data at those intersections where improvements have been recently completed.
Okay, so so the timing of this isn't an issue for some of these intersections.
No. I
timing
mean,
of this
the
exercise.
timing is now. I mean, I guess
Okay.
because we have the funds available from BIL, and we need to do this, get the plan adopted, so that we can avail of the infrastructure money that could also be potentially the city could get from the same law. The timing is great.
I want to react to one thing. Mr. Paulson said nobody was driving during the pandemic. But I think our statistics would show that while fewer people were driving, those people who were driving at a much faster rate. And we had a number of very serious accidents due to speed-related conditions rather than anything else. So the fact that the roads were empty does not necessarily the direct correlation between a drop in the number of accidents. I think if you look at this, and I think the chief would bear this out, we had a large number of high-speed accidents and other events that occurred during the pandemic. So I would suggest that that's probably a reason for the 50% increase over the last 5 years as opposed to maybe other factors.
I hear you, and I've heard the same statistics, and there are a lot of people driving a lot faster. There were just, so many fewer people.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to just see if the skewing of accidents in COVID was fewer overall accidents, but more serious ones because everybody was driving so much faster. Let's look at it and see.
Absolutely, yeah. We have the historical information month by month, all that data, and that will be part of the plan. Obviously, I don't want to bring all the data to you. I have seen your agenda, the rest of the agenda. You have a packed agenda.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next item is the proposed signal upgrades at Hammond Drive at Lake Forest and Hammond Drive at Sandy Springs Circle. Mr. Martin, you're back. Oh, you're not back. Ms. Westcott.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, City Council and Mayor. This evening, we just want to talk a little bit about some identified signal improvements that address, we hope, some of the safety concerns that we have documented, as well as citizen concerns about the same. So the two intersections are part of a 5-intersection project. We've started on the past couple of years trying to make some short-term safety and operational upgrades, update our records and our plans, and kind of bring things up to current standards related to accessibility. So this is our second round, and the intersections that were included in this round were Roswell Road at Trowbridge and at Northridge, Dunwoody Place at Hope, and Hammond Drive at Lake Forest and at Sandy Springs Circle. And those are the two that we're going to talk about a little bit more right now. Hammond Drive is an interesting corridor going from Mount Vernon and then into the perimeter all the way over to Ashford, Dunwoody. And Dunwoody changes quite a bit in character, what the land use are, what the volumes are. This is at the lower volume end of the corridor, kind of in the heart, the south heart of our city center area. What we have found at both intersections, that going through our analysis process, that Hammond Drive at Lake Forest needs to be brought up to current standards for accessibility, that the engineering analysis actually shows that it meets requirements for adding a dedicated left turn lane in the east and westbound directions due to crash history and traffic volumes. So we would make those changes as well as add reflective back plates on the intersection. Similarly, at Hammond Drive at Sandy Springs Circle, we also need to bring the signalized intersection up to current accessible standards. We also meet the criteria for adding dedicated left turn lanes in east, southbound direction for crashes and volumes. Digging down into the crashes more specifically, at Hammond Drive at Lake Forest, we've seen kind of a disproportionate number of angle and head-on crashes between 2018 and 2022, so 60%. Looking at the operations of the intersection, if we make these improvements, we will still retain a level of service C, which is pretty acceptable. And there's, in the existing configuration, there's excess capacity. Likewise, at Hammond Drive at Sandy Spring Circle, we've had 40 angle head-on or rear-end side swipe crashes, which are pretty, they can end up with those more serious injury crashes. 40% were angle and 52% were rear-end or side swipe. So, again, with the improvements, we will retain level of service C in all the peak hours. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about kind of changing the geometry of the street a little bit right now. It's 2 lanes in each direction, and they're shared through lefts in the eastbound, westbound direction on Hammond Drive at Lake Forest. So what we have recommended is maintain that 1 through lane westbound, maintain 1 lane eastbound, and add dedicated left turn lanes that would have left turn bays and protected signals. At Hammond Drive at Sandy Springs Circle, we actually have the opportunity to carve out a westbound right turn lane as well as a southbound left turn lane and a eastbound left turn lane. And again, the benefit of this project is we can do all of this within the existing right-of-way. No additional right-of-way is required. It really is accommodated through repaving and restriping, which is scheduled. And finally, what does that look like? This is preliminary concept drawing showing how that roadway width within the curbs are reallocated. So the final next steps are to finalize our signal plans and prepare the project for construction bidding. But just wanted to hear any thoughts you had about us moving forward with that today.
Ms. Mueller.
Thanks, Kristen. Question just to confirm. So as you're traveling southbound on Sandy Springs Circle toward Hammond Drive, and you're going to make the left turn to go westbound on Hammond, there currently is a turn lane there, but there's no signal. So after all of this, there will be a signal to turn left there, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I never understood why there wasn't one there, so I'm glad we're putting that in.
Any other questions? Mr. Paulson.
Just a quick comment. I love these projects where you can restripe a highway and achieve intersection improvement. So fantastic. Let's keep looking for these because they're
Thank you.
the easiest way and the cheapest way to improve things. So fantastic. Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Ms. Westcott.
Thank you.
Any other items by council? All right. We will close the work session, move to regular order. I would like to call this meeting of the Sandy Springs City Council to order for Tuesday, June the 18th, 2024. Will the city clerk please make the announcements and call the roll?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I would like to remind those in attendance, please silence all cell phones or other electronic devices at this time. Also, a reminder that individuals who would like to provide public comment at a city council meeting are required to complete and submit a public comment card in advance of the meeting. Those public comment cards are available at the chamber entrance and online. Those providing public comment may be allotted up to 3 minutes to speak on their single chosen topic. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Rusty Paul.
Present.
Councilmember John Paulson. Here. Councilmember Melody Kelly. Here. Councilmember Melissa Mueller.
Here.
Councilmember Jody Rochelle. Here. Councilmember Tibby DiGiulio. Here. Councilmember Andy Bauman. Here.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment cards?
Yes, we've received 2 this evening, both in-house. The first is from Mr. Bill Griffith, who will be followed by Theodore Davis.
Mr. Griffith.
Mr. Mayor and council members, regarding the 150-page document titled Roberts Drive Side Path Scoping Report dated March of this year, specifically the memo on the unnumbered page 129 therein from Atkins Global dated May 15 of last year that states, quote, "The goal of this project is to create a safer and more comfortable walking and bicycling environment along Roberts Drive." Let's not be satisfied to just create a safer environment sometime in the future. Let's create a safe environment now. Why? An approximate 1 mile stretch of Roberts Drive that's part of phase 2 of the side path plan is a very dangerous road. It may be the most dangerous residential mile in the city. If it's not the most dangerous, surely it's on the short list. Here's why. Roberts Drive is a curvy and hilly road, and many drivers recklessly ignore the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit and seem oblivious to the dangers of doing so, including endangering others. There are a lot of bicyclists and walkers on that road, and there's not a sidewalk on over half of that 1 mile stretch of road. There have been many serious single-car accidents on that stretch of road. I was at the scene of at least 11 of those accidents prior to the wreckage being removed. All of those accidents involved the vehicle leaving the roadway. All of them likely resulted in totaled automobiles. The driver in at least one of those accidents died. In addition to those 11 at the scene accidents, I'm aware of at least 8 other accidents where the vehicle left the roadway. What caused those accidents? Speeding. Most of those 19 vehicles would have left skid marks on a sidewalk that's 5 feet off the curb. Thus, such a sidewalk would not have provided a safe environment for anyone who happened to be in the path of any of those vehicles when they left the roadway. So how do we create a safe environment? The proposed side path is not the answer by itself. Neither is any sidewalk by itself. The answer is to slow the speeders and provide a comfortable off-the-road place to walk or bike. How do you slow the speeders? Reduce the speed limit to 25 miles an hour and install speed humps, similar to those on Glen Ridge Drive near Spalding. Is probably the best way. Alternatively, reduce the speed to 25 and have the police enforce it with radar. How do you give people a comfortable place to walk or bike
Mr.
other
Griffith,
than on the road?
Your time's up. Can you finish in one sentence?
2 more.
Quick sentences.
How do you give them a comfortable place to walk? Fill the sidewalks. If you're serious about creating a safe environment, you will do what's necessary to reduce the speed and fill the gaps in the sidewalks.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis.
All right. Theodore Davis III, 5230 Green Oak Court. And don't worry, this time I'm not here to criticize. Instead, I'm actually here to talk about one of the sources of funding tonight going into the budget, office buildings. Now, Sandy Springs is known for a number of things, including a great array of businesses, including some of the top ones in the state and the nation. However, last month we also heard how there's also some red signs as well, mainly with the value decline of office buildings as demand for those office buildings also decline. Now, one of the recommendations was possible conversions of the office buildings, and as is pretty popular right now, one thing being heavily talked about is converting office buildings to residential buildings. Now, of course, that's easier said than done for a wide variety of reasons, such as inoperable windows, restrictive floor plans, and even with just how the building is built. So there's an obvious question. Is it worth trying to consider this? Such conversions? Well, it turns out recent research suggests yes, it should actually be considered. Last week, Jorge Gonzalez Hermoso of the Urban Institute looked at 83 different metro areas to determine which areas might benefit the most from working with these kinds of conversions. Obviously, as I'm up here, you can probably guess this area is one of those. Not only is it one of the top 4 areas that might benefit, but it's also one that has the second highest housing supply need in the nation, surprisingly enough, first being Colorado Springs. Now, Mr. Gonzalez Hermoso also highlighted a number of different methods that could be used to help these conversions occur, including changes to land ordinances and building codes, expedited reviews for projects that meet certain criteria, as well as tax credits and abatements. Personally, I'm a little bit wary about the last method, but it is worth noting that a City of Atlanta study on these kinds of conversions determined that these kinds of credits might actually make the difference between some of these conversions happening or not. Now, of course, not all office buildings are going to be available to be converted, no matter how many tax credits, abatements, changes to building codes happen. And that's fine. But for the ones that are realistic, it should be considered about whether or not to convert these to residential. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Any further? All right, we'll close the public comment period and move further. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. DiGiulio.
I move approval of the meeting agenda for Tuesday, June 18th, 2024.
We have a motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Is there a second? Second. Moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Mr. Paulson to approve the meeting agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on approval of the meeting agenda. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The agenda is approved. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve the consent agenda for Tuesday, June 18th.
Motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on approval of the consent agenda. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The consent agenda is approved. Moving to the next item is presentations. So will the clerk please read the item?
Yes, this is item 2024-147. It's a presentation of matching funds for the Springway Trail and Abernathy South Greenway from Sandy Springs Conservancy. This is presented by Jack Mashura, Sandy Springs Conservancy Chairman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here representing the Sandy Springs Conservancy with fellow board member Alexandra Allen. Alex is the chair of our development committee, who through her and her committee's hard work, we're able to maintain and develop a great network of supporters and contributors to Sandy Springs Conservancy that allow us to come here and share some of our hard work with the city. So we thank you. I want to thank you first of all for indulging our shameless request for a photo opportunity tonight. But we did come bearing gifts, and starting off, I want to thank everyone up here for your support of trails and green space and parks in Sandy Springs. It's an important part of our community, and we've made a lot of progress, and we really appreciate your support behind that. We're really excited for the progress on the Morgan Falls Trail. I'm sure a lot of you have been up there and seen some of the work that's going on with the imminent completion and opening of the Segment 2A and the Orkin Lake Boardwalk later this year, funding for the right-of-way acquisition for Segment 2E and the design for Segment 2C. We're making a lot of progress on that trail, and it's going to be a really cool thing in about however many years it takes to finally finish it. We're pleased with the allocation for funding for Old Riverside Park and Path 400, which will both be landmark recreational assets for our city. And then before we get on with our presentation, I really wanted to take just a couple seconds to acknowledge and recognize our partners at
on city staff for all for the great relationship we have with them, all the great work they do to help implement all the things that we dream up, and without them, we wouldn't be able to get half of the stuff done that we get done with the city of Sandy Springs. So you do have a great staff. So I'm going to turn it over to Alex and ask Rusty to come up, Mr. Mayor, and for our presentation.
Thank you so much for having us tonight. And I'm Alex, and it is my great pleasure to present two checks, each in the amount of $10,000. One of them is for the Morgan Falls Connector Trail, Segment 2E, which is the next up at the plate. So here you go.
Thank you.
And that will require a little bit of construction equipment. So we brought you some.
All right.
The next contribution is in support of the Abernathy Greenway South improvements. It has had some water damage over the years, and there is a plan to remedy that and re-beautify it with native plantings and fewer invasive species. That may require a backhoe digger. So we have a check and a backhoe digger.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. Take care.
All right. Over here.
With our friends, with all our friends. And construction equipment and the money.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, guys.
This will be an argument with my grandsons, I know. So this I'm keeping. Thank you to the Sandy Springs Conservancy for your support in all of these and other projects that we've done. The contributions by the Conservancy to this community are dozens of projects we've done around this community with the results of, or the assistance, and oftentimes the sole responsibility of the Conservancy through the years. Before we became a city, a lot of the things that happened here were done by the Conservancy. We had, I guess in Britain they would call it a shadow government that got a lot of things done before we became a city, but even since we become a city, you've remained a faithful partner in helping us do the things like parks and trails and so on. And I think that I can speak without contradiction for the rest of the folks at this dais. Your contributions, your work, your dedication to our community is greatly appreciated, and we are thankful for what you've done. But we're particularly thankful for those checks. Thank you. All right. Moving to public hearings, will the clerk please read the first item?
This is agenda item number 2024-148. Consideration of an ordinance to provide for the adoption of a budget, its execution, and effect for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024, and ending July 30th, 2025. This is the second public hearing presented by City Manager Eden Freeman.
Ms. Freeman.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Tonight we reach an important milestone in our fiscal year budget process, the culmination of the FY25 budget development, presentation, and ultimately the adoption by Council. The next slide, please, Caroline. This has been an ongoing process that staff has been working on very strenuously for about 6 months. Council has been engaged in significant discussions with us since the end of April for your desires and what you would like to see in the budget that is before you tonight for adoption. Next slide, please. As a reminder, everything that is included in this budget ties back to Council's adopted priorities. Next slide. This slide includes a detail of the general fund expenditures broken up by department with the corresponding page number to the budget book that is included both online and in your budget book. These numbers have not changed since our last discussion. Next slide, please. This slide is a summary of all of our budgeted expenditures by fund. Also, this has not changed since our last discussion. Next slide, please. Finally, this slide has changed slightly since our last discussion. You'll recall that we had some conversation about an additional $800,000 that was remaining in year-end estimated undesignated general fund balance. The consensus of council during those discussions was for that $800,000 to be put back into our general fund balance reserve. That number is reflected in the item that you see in the middle of the screen, and we've increased the amount that you see for the percentage of expenditures to 25.6%. That does not change our financial policy. Our financial policy requires that we keep 25% of our general fund budgeted expenditures in our rainy day fund from year to year. Next slide, please. We've also updated our capital projects funding summary to include the expenditures that have been made through the T-SPLOST program, both T-SPLOST 1, the 2016, and T-SPLOST 2, 2021. It's important to note that the T-SPLOST numbers are actual expenditures. We still have funds that are encumbered and are being spent, but it will take us a number of years to spend those. The amounts that are listed for Capital Projects Fund and Stormwater Fund are actual transfers out of the general fund to those funds each year, going back to our incorporation. Our sum total that has been returned in investments in our infrastructure in Sandy Springs since incorporation is now $441 million. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have about the budget before you this evening.
All right, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
Yes. Excuse me. We've received one public comment. Mr. Bill Griffith.
Mr. Griffith.
Have I actually got 10 minutes? I won't take 10 minutes. I promise. I would like to ask that you folks don't rubber stamp the budget without doing a deep dive into some of these numbers. Let me give you an example. The city manager's office is increased 50% from last year, but the number of employees hadn't changed. I think it's 4, but the numbers have gone up 50%. I'd like to understand that if I was you. Secondly, the emergency management numbers have increased 33%. That's worth a deep dive into also. The fleet section is increased 212%. The judge's pay is up 50% from last year. And to whatever extent the budget includes any spending on the Roberts Drive side path, you know where I stand on that. Anyhow, I would encourage you to do a deep dive into some of these numbers and don't just rubber stamp the thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. I'll ask the city manager to explain some of those. Just know that we have been deep diving for 3 months on this budget. We have gone through this budget with a fine-tooth comb, everybody up here, so we're not rubber stamping anything. If you have been following our public hearings and meetings on the budget, you know that we've asked an awful lot of questions about this budget, including many of the items that you just outlined. And when we take a vote on it, it will not be just simply rubber stamping. It will be the result of a lot of inquiry from this body. But thank you for that.
I appreciate that y'all have done a deep dive. I'm probably late to the game, but when I see a 48% increase for the same amount of personnel, I'm behind.
No.
Thank you.
City Manager, would you like to respond to a couple
Yes,
of those?
sir. If Mr. Griffith would look at the bottom of page 5 in the budget book, we are actually adding 2 positions in the city manager's office, full year funding. One is a new grants administrator, and the other is a director of data strategy and analytics. So the staff count is increasing in the city manager's office with this budget.
All right, thank you. We'll close the public hearing if there are no further comments. You've heard the report of the city manager. What's the desire of council? Mr. Paulson.
Of agenda item 2024-148. I'm sorry. Ordinance to provide for the adoption of the budget for 2024-25. Its execution effect for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2025.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we approve Agenda Item 2024-148, an ordinance to provide for the adoption of a budget, its execution, and effect for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024, ending June 30, 2025. Is there any discussion?
Mayor Paul?
Mr. Paulson, as the maker of the motion, has the right of first comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Griffith, for your comments. But we've been looking at this thing since April. There's quite a bit of work that does go into these, and I appreciate staff's time, both in assembling this as well as in going through the details, of which there are many when you have a budget this big. This is a hard task. It's a heavy lift for everybody in the city, and I appreciate everybody's efforts in putting this thing together this year. So that's all I have.
Mr. Baumann?
Thank you. Mayor Paul, I want to echo Councilman Paulson and give you a little visual. I've got at least several hundred pages in this book from staff through different versions, 2 copies of the full budget, and I'm really grateful to you for that work. Do I necessarily agree with each and every line item in a $155 million budget of operating from the general fund, $1 billion budget? Yes, we've talked about that. Probably not. But this is a good budget, and we are the stewards of taxpayer money, and we continue to do it with the same millage rate every year, delivering best-in-class police services, best-in-class fire services, first responders, paved roads, fun. We do some wants in addition to our needs. So this is a damn good budget, and I'm proud to approve it tonight.
Mr. DiGiulio?
Mr. Mayor, 19 years ago, I believe our budget was in the $60 million range, and we were wondering where it was going to come from. And now we're talking about a budget of $155 million plus over $400 million in capital expenditures, and that doesn't include this building.
Correct.
And there's a reason that the budget numbers have gone up so much. As you're probably aware of, inflation is at the highest rate it's been in the last 40 years. Now, most of you people in the audience are not old enough to remember 1979, 1980. Mr. Griffin, I know, is, and I am, and Councilman Baumann is. And one of the things about inflation is, even though the rate of inflation is coming down, the inflation we've had these past several years has not come down. Nobody in this city has said, well, inflation has come down, let me take a pay cut. Last year, the year before, inflation was up, we were having to pay people to get qualified people. But I do want everybody to understand that we do go through this budget, and as I tell people constantly, the 2 cheapest people in Sandy Springs were Eva and myself. And I hate to spend money, and I hate to spend taxpayer money. And we've gone through this many, many ways. You know, for example, some of the things that have really caused this to go up is our ambulance service. Our emergency services have gone crazy. They're more than double what they were last year. Our police have to, we pride ourselves on our emergency responders in this city. And in order to keep the best quality, which we feel we have got to go ahead and compensate these people fairly and what they could get other place. And we've always said we want our police to be paid higher than normal, but we want them to act much higher than normal. And we've been able to do that. We've been able to have, we have a staff here that we never thought we would have. We originally wanted to go, of course, as you all know, with a contract government. Well, that just wasn't going to work in this inflationary environment. And I have to say, by having been involved in every budget that Sandy Springs has ever had, this budget is a fair budget, and this budget is a necessary budget to keep the level of services that you and I expect out of the city of Sandy Springs. We don't want to live in a second-rate city. We want this city to be the best in the state. And in the 90s, we did a little campaign that said, Sandy Springs, Georgia's next great city. And I think we have the great city of Sandy Springs in the state of Georgia, and it takes money to run. But remember, we've never had a tax increase, and that is been carved in cement in our thinking here. And so I just want everybody to feel comfortable that we really have done our homework on this budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Rochelle.
Mr. Griffith, I do want to thank you for responding and talking about the budget, because we appreciate citizen engagement. So we do appreciate that. And I just want to, you've already covered a lot, but I will say that I spent a lot of time, and even up until probably midnight last night, looking through not only our budget, but the budgets of other cities. I went through Savannah and Roswell and Alpharetta and compared them to our budget, just as far as, spending, where we're spending our dollars. And I like our budget a lot. Like Andy said, do I agree with everything? I could tweak maybe one or two things, but overall I'm very happy, and I appreciate all of our staff time. Eden and your staff, I appreciate all the time that you took to do the budget.
All right. Dr. Kelly.
I had a few quick questions about the budget. For our court budget, I'll start there. We are about to see 30% increase operations.
There's an item on your agenda later this evening to increase the salaries the hourly rate of our municipal court judges.
Right, so that should be reflected in personnel, right? Or
that's part of operations.
Oh, okay, it's not personnel, or it'll be in both, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
Because they're contracted. They're not city employees, the judges.
Oh, okay, so it'll show up in operations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what that'll be. How about the emergency management, 35%?
That was the increase in AMR's contract. As Councilman DiGiulio mentioned, we had a massive increase in that you all approved at the last council meeting.
Right. So the fleet service, gasoline, is that for the fleet center?
That's consolidating all of the gasoline charges across all of the departments into one. So it's now in fleet's budget instead of being in police department and fire department.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see it like that going on.
Yes,
it's just a little change we made.
Mm-hmm.
How about our, it looks like a decrease in community development, 30%?
They had additional one-time funds added last year for additional staffing and some additional tools that they needed. Those funds went away. And I can we can go back and find the slides where we talked through all of those, but those were the general decrease that came from that.
Okay. So we shouldn't expect a decrease in service from that
No,
department.
absolutely not.
Okay. It looks like the tree fund is going to get $60,000 transferred into it from the general fund?
I have to go back and look at that slide.
All right, that's page 34. I just wanted to make sure, because we
That's
haven't.
the 50% for funding the personnel.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, okay.
Thank
That's
you,
to
Tony.
fund our, oh, okay, right, because we're doing sort of a half and half kind of thing with our personnel. Thank you, just noticed it looked a little different. And, economic development, we have 2 employees, I think. Hold on, let me make sure of that.
One.
I think that's what I saw. So that's just director and,
An economic development manager position. Those are the
okay.
2 FTEs.
okay, so we're keeping those.
That's right.
The multiple grant fund has some employees on it. Who are the employees?
Those
or
are
what-
within the police department for the grant that we received last year from the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget for the Violent Crime Reduction Grant.
Okay, think we'll end up absorbing that
Yes.
at some point? All right, and the city trail that's mentioned, that term, in our capital projects, what's the city trail?
What
As
page
opposed
are
to the
you
spring
looking
one.
at?
Capital projects, it's going to be Parks, I think it's Parks and Rec, hold on. Yeah, Parks and Recs, P0028. So it's called City Trail Design. That may just be the Springway, though.
It is. That is the ongoing fund. And you'll notice that we are not allocating additional funds for that this year because we are carrying forward prior year funding.
Okay. The Morgan Falls Athletic Center building demolition, same page. So that's not included in our Morgan Falls Athletic Complex improvements. That's actually separate, a separate 75.
That was an additional request, and it was included as an enhancement from the Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay. I think those are all mine. Oh, opioid fund. It goes where? Expenditures out there.
Based on the conditions of the settlements that were reached with the distributors and the pharmaceutical companies, the funds can only be used for opioid prevention programs. We are working with a staff team to develop a program that we'll use to distribute those funds. It can only really be used for things like purchasing of Narcan or awareness programs such as the one that we had earlier this year with the HIDA director who came and spoke.
All right, because we're listing it as hospitality, but I guess that's just sort of a general catch-all type of terminology. All right, thank you.
Any further comment, questions? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2024-148, an ordinance to provide for the adoption of a budget, its execution, and effect for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024 and ending June 30, 2025. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The budget is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-149. This is TA 24-0001. Request for Mayor and City Council consideration of an ordinance to amend the development code to allow for green retaining walls, presented by Planning and Zoning Manager Michelle McIntosh Ross.
Ms. McIntosh Ross.
Greetings. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. All right. Tonight I'm bringing a text amendment for your consideration, TA 24-0001, related to retaining wall materials and finishes, to allow green-faced retaining walls. If you recall, back in April, Senior Planner Matthew Ann Spa presented at a work session the proposed text amendment, and you provided the direction to pursue the text amendment. Since then, we've drafted the language and took it all the way through to the Planning Commission for their recommendation, which was for approval. The purpose and goal of the amendment is to include vegetative covering, green-faced, as an allowed finish for retaining walls. Where the code now limits material finishes to only stucco, brick, or stone, this amendment will expand the options to include green-faced vegetative cladding, with the stipulation that this would only be allowed in the side and or rear yards, never in the front. This policy will not negatively impact the natural environment, but may be a benefit as natural vegetative surfaces have positive effects on stormwater absorption and cooling effects. This policy also does not negatively impact the intent or spirit of the existing development patterns, standards, or zoning regulations. Here are some pictures of what this may look like. The far right and bottom two pictures show fully vegetated examples. The top two pictures show partial coverage. This amendment is requiring 50% vegetative coverage at time of certificate of completion and 100% coverage throughout all seasons thereafter. Here is the addition. It's in blue. In section 9.4.3.8.3, under the materials and finishes section, we are inserting the option to utilize the vegetative elements as a finishing material that can be approved by the director. It reads, the wall must be located in the side or rear yards and be planted with native, non-invasive evergreen planting material. The plant growth must be at a minimum 50% of the wall's face prior to closeout of the permit and maintained throughout all seasons. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this text amendment, TA 24-0001, at the May 22nd meeting, and staff also recommends approval of this amendment.
Thank you. Have we received any public comment cards? All right, we will close the public hearing. You've heard the report of the Planning and Zoning Manager. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
I move approval of agenda item 2024-149, an ordinance to amend the development code to allow for green retaining walls.
Have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we approve agenda item 2024-149, an ordinance to amend the development code to allow for green retaining walls. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
Thank you very much. This is something that Councilman DeGiulio and I ran into in January, where there was a project that was actually ideally suited for this, but turns out our code at the time precluded it, did not allow it. So I think this is a good addition to our code. It allows both cost savings as well as a vegetative solution, which is much softer than some of these hard armor solutions that we see.
Yes.
So I'm in favor of that. I think it's a great idea. You said something, though, that I have to ask you about. There's a minimum of 50% vegetative coverage at the time of permit closeout. And then you said it jumps to 100%. I didn't see that in this, and I don't remember having that conversation about it jumping to 100% coverage after the permit. So can you clarify that, Ginger, or somebody?
Oh, okay.
Ginger rides to the rescue.
Sorry, Michelle misunderstood the intent of that last part of the sentence.
Okay.
The minimum is going to be a 50% coverage always.
And they have to maintain at least that much, if not more.
That's correct, not 100.
That's what I thought it was. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Thank you.
No worries.
Anyway, it's a great addition. I'm looking forward to the contractors. I actually vetted this with a couple of contractors to do this, and nobody yelled, so I think they also think it's positive. So, again, good job. Thank you very much. I think this is needed and hopefully can help.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Dr. Kelly.
I was curious about the maintain throughout all seasons line. So it's evergreen. That's required. Why did we feel the need to put that last little piece at the end? Is it because certain seasons maybe things don't get maintained?
Well, we're requiring evergreens so that it'll be covered throughout the season. So that's what we're intending, that during the winter months it wouldn't disappear for all of winter and then just replenish during the spring and summer. We're wanting that coverage to be maintained throughout the seasons.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-149, an ordinance to amend the development code to allow for green retaining walls. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Thank you.
The item is approved. Moving to new business, the clerk will please read the first item.
Agenda item number 2024-150. This is consideration of a resolution to accept and purchase the recommended finalists for the FY24 Arts in the Open Sculpture Competition for permanent display in various locations in the city. Presented by Melissa Patterson, the committee chair at Art Sandy Springs Art in the Open Sculpture Competition.
Ms. Patterson, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm so pleased to be back. As presented in the work session 2 weeks ago, we are recommending a gift to the city, and that is a sculpture gift. That's from Art Sandy Springs. In addition, we recommend 3 sculptures for purchase. The 4 sculptures will be added to the 29 sculptures purchased or gifted that are permanently displayed in the city. So we'll walk through. So Caprice is a work by Charles Pilkey of Mint Hill, North Carolina, and this is the item that we would like to gift to the city. The suggested location is at Abernathy Arts Center, and Ms. Reichel, you asked at the work session if this may have to go unattended for a while because of the construction. So we have recommended that this go in the plaza of the existing annex building, and so the construction would not prohibit this from being installed when it's ready. Next slide, please. So the 3 sculptures we are recommending for purchase. This is Nesting by Rick Herzog of Athens, Georgia. This has been a very popular piece. Next slide. Upcycle by Johnny Yunkins Herzog of Athens, Georgia, another crowd favorite. And then finally, next slide, please. Flowing Arches. This is by Matt Moyer of Columbia, Missouri. These 4 sculptures are currently on display on City Green with 5 others, and they'll be on display through the first week in August. This represents the 5th year of our annual sculpture contest. We worked with the city staff to suggest the locations for these to be placed permanently. I invite you to have any questions.
All right, you've heard the report of our partner, the Art Sandy Springs Arts in the Open Sculpture Committee. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul,
Mr. Baumann.
I move that we adopt agenda item 2024-150, request to accept and purchase the recommended finalists for the FY24 Arts in the Open Sculpture Competition.
I have a motion by Mr. Baumann. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2024-150, adopting a resolution accepting and purchasing the recommended finalists for the FY 2024 Arts in the Open Sculpture Competition for permanent display in various locations in the city. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Melissa, just let me add to the thanks from the last meeting. Our community is really enriched by having an arts program, be it the sculpture or the indoor art, student competitions. And, this is not something that the government can take on by itself, but it's clearly a great partnership. And, I really appreciate what you and the others do to enrich and beautify and, bring the city color and life. And so for that, I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2024-150, a resolution accepting and purchasing the recommended finalists for the 2024 Arts in the Open Sculpture Competition for permanent display. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. Ms. Patterson, thank you for
very
all
much.
the work you folks do with us. Mr. Baumann will recall that this idea came from a trip to Israel where every little village had sculptures. And I said, well, we can do that here too. And you folks have taken that idea and run with it, and it's really
I
appreciated.
remember it vividly, which is why I still want to see them in roundabouts, but we'll save that for another day.
They have a lot of beautiful white limestone over there
Yeah,
that they
they sure
use,
do.
so we don't have that here.
Yeah.
But you have, you've taken that concept and done an extremely good job. Thank you. All right, moving to the next item. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-151, consideration to fix and approve the hourly compensation rates of the judges appointed to the Sandy Springs Municipal Court. It's presented by Court Administrator Cheston Roney.
Mr. Roney.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request to fix and approve the hourly compensation rate of the judges appointed to the Sandy Springs Municipal Court. The Sandy Springs ordinances give the Council the power to affix the hourly compensation rate of the chief and associate judges appointed to the municipal court. The current pay rates are $150 for the chief judge and $145 for the associate judges. In order to remain competitive with other cities and municipal courts in the North Fulton area, which range hourly rates when converted to hourly rate $200 to $237.50 on average, I'm asking that the judges' rates be adjusted to $225 for the chief judge and $220 for the associate judges. And I would point out, too, that if approved, this would only be the second time that the pay rate would be adjusted for the judges in Sandy Springs.
And this is based on salary surveys for similar jurisdictions in the area?
Yeah, salary surveys for the North Fulton cities, so Roswell, Alpharetta, Milton, and Johns Creek.
Okay, thank you. You've heard the report of the court administrator. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Dr. Kelly.
I move approval of agenda item 2024-151. The approval of the hourly compensation rates of the judges appointed to the Sandy Springs Municipal Court.
We have a motion by Dr. Kelly. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Dr. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve agenda item 2024-151, a motion to fix and approve the hourly compensation rates of the judges appointed to the Sandy Springs Municipal Court. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Dr. Kelly.
Related, sort of, maybe not really, but I'm curious. How do we decide what sort of tickets a person has to come to court for?
The must appear cases are generally set by the chief judge.
Okay.
So the chief judge sets those cases that have to come to court, and they're usually more serious traffic cases.
Okay. Okay.
So.
Thanks. Oh,
Yes.
yes. No, see, come on, Judge Schaefer. Yes.
Judge Schaefer. come hither.
I've been doing this a long time, and we came up with this must be peers because, for example, laws are for like kids are different than me. I'm not a kid. Okay, not even close. But for example,
Judge Sheffield, could you step in front of the microphone, please?
Yeah, I'm a parader, you know.
I understand.
But so there's certain cases that are more serious. Okay, that could suspend your license, for example. So if you just paid it online, you get that little letter in the mail about a month later from the DDS saying, "Give me your license." So we make them come to court. We have young drivers who don't get it. So we want them to come to court to see it's a little more serious. You just can't pay the ticket in the mail, have mommy pay the ticket or daddy pay the ticket in the mail, and it's the severity of the case. Okay, for like a school bus, they have to come to court. They can't pay it. And if you paid, I know you all paid attention to the legislature. They just changed that law significantly. Now I'm going to make another point to address what we were talking about earlier in the distracted driving. The best suggestion is I know I'm taking my platform. Go to legislature and change the law. We need the law has no beef to it. Chief can tell you that. The hands-free law reads the way it reads. And there's really no incentive to stop these people besides it's dangerous as heck. But we make people come to court based on the seriousness of the charge. If it's a 4-point ticket, it's a suspendable ticket. Of course, then the DCs, of course, we make them come in.
Judge, is like for example, lapsing insurance. Is that like a 4-point?
No. There's certain charges, about 7 of them, that suspend your license upon conviction. That's one of them. So if I was to pay a ticket that's suspended, a no insurance ticket, if I was to pay it online, and believe me, there are some courts that used to let that happen, you get your license suspended. And say, for example, you had a lapsing coverage, you come to court, I'm sorry, I've gone through a divorce, my husband was supposed to pay it, but I've heard the story. There is a provision under the law to accept a no contest plea, but only a judge can take it. And so that's how they save their license. So they have to come to court to save their license. So that's how you're protecting them from themselves a lot of times. And sometimes it makes an impression, we hope.
Thank you for being here today.
I'm here. I'm always here. If
Mayor
you
Paul.
need me, just ask. Anybody?
All right, Mr. Baumann.
I would recommend anybody go sit in Judge Schaefer's court. I've been there as an observer. I maybe got a ticket years ago. But really, what an educational, and the TV judges can't hold a candle to you, but it's a mix of scared straight but also with empathy, and our court system would be really better off with more judges like you. It's just really a marvel to watch you. So, and thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
Any further questions? All right.
Thank you,
Judge.
Appreciate it. Thank you for everything you all do.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-151, fixing and improving the hourly compensation rate of the judges appointed to the Sandy Springs Municipal Court. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-152. This is consideration to approve a contract award to Kimley Horn Associates, Inc. to perform engineering design consultant services related to the CDBG Connecting Sidewalks project, including the Northwood Drive Sidewalk and Pedestrian Crossing, that's T00338, the Long Island Drive Sidewalk, T00339, and the Hope Road Sidewalk, T00310, and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and council, good evening. Tonight I bring before you an award recommendation to Kimley Horn to perform the sidewalk designs the city clerk just read to you in this case. Long Island Drive Sidewalk, Northwood Drive Sidewalk, and the Hope Road Sidewalk. The services requested with funding through Community Development Block Grant, CDBG in this case, survey, concept design, design development, utility coordination, and right-of-way support, final design phase, public involvement, and post-design services. The city issued a request for proposals on 2 separate occasions, seeking qualified consultants to perform this work. The initial advertisement was posted on November 29, 2023, 4 design firms were identified as plan holders. However, none participated in submitting a response to the request for proposal due on December 15th. Since no response was received, Public Works team requested the project be re-advertised, which was done on January 31st, 2024. With that second request for proposals, we did get a statement or a response from Kimley Horn, and that was received on March 7th, 2024 deadline. Between those two proposals, we did ask consultants that we believed might have submitted proposals, why not? Why didn't you submit proposals? And the answer we received from those is, given the relative complexity of the federal process, some of them not that familiar with the process, they opted not to pursue the work given the relatively small amount of sidewalk work contemplated within this request for proposals. So that was the response, and we were appreciative of Kimley Horn to support us with what we believe is a relatively close number based on staff estimates for this work. Staff did evaluate Kimley Horn's work request for proposal, consensus score of some 85.75 based on the scoring methodology. And with review of the scope and the services proposed, Kimley Horn presented a final scope and fee of some $730,490 on May 16, 2024 to move forward with this project. Again, Community Development Block Grant, Brooks Act type procurement. We need to go on a qualifications-based assessment in this case. So staff recommends moving forward with the award to Kimley Horn in the amount of $730,490 against an overall program budget of some $2.35 million. Mayor and Council, do you have any questions? And there are adequate funds forecasted within the Community Development Block Grant budget to support this work.
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Will you entertain a motion? Ready?
Yes.
Okay. I move we adopt agenda item 2024-152 as described on the agenda for projects T00338, 9, and 10.
Motion by Mr. Baumann. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2024-152, approving contract award to Kimley Horn Associates, performing engineering design consultant services related to the connecting sidewalk project, including Northwoods pedestrian crossing, Long Island Drive sidewalk, and the Hope Road sidewalk, and authorizing city manager to execute the contract. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Marty, can you put the bid in context to what you indicated you all expected and comparable projects? I just don't feel like I have a really great basis for understanding the $730,000, how that might translate to hours worked.
$730,000 at a rough approximation lands at about 20% or so of the overall estimate for the entire delivery of these projects, design being about 20% of the total cost. So with some expected right-of-way cost, utility relocation costs, and of course construction within that.
Okay. So on all of your metrics, I mean, do we have an on-call program for these kinds of services, or?
We do have on-call. However, in the case of this federally funded, relatively specific program, we're required to go with a qualifications-based selection to select a consultant for this particular work for these particular dollars. For instance, for T-Splost, by contrast, where we're not bound by those federal regulations, we use our on-call designers. Kristen talked to you a little bit earlier this evening about some traffic signal design with modifications we're going to make on Hammond Drive. She's able to utilize, since it's local funds again, those on-call traffic consultants that we have on hand in order to do that work. With these specific regulations requiring the qualifications-based selection here, we don't maintain an on-call.
When I reviewed this earlier, Caroline, can you just scoot up a little? I want to see the rest of the evaluation committee. So, does the evaluation committee look at the financial side of it? I mean, these are all protractor people, maybe not calculator people.
These are project managers.
Yeah, no,
a traffic engineer and
not to take it away.
right-of-way specialist.
I'm looking
Yes,
for a TIBI in the review of the money?
No, sir.
Does it go through a?
We don't. Yeah. So in this case, we require that the consultant, and Wesley, please correct me if I'm wrong here.
The question, let me make it easy. Eden, again, we're with the one bid after no bids. Do we have an internal control, checks and balances to eyeball the cost of the project when we've got a single bidder, which also raises, I'm not saying I don't have any problem, but when we also have bids that maybe are out of whack, this also raises questions. Do we have an internal control to look at the number? Because the option would be to reject the bid. Not suggesting we do it. I'm just asking about a process question here.
So the bottom line is yes, because not only does our public works staff review it, then Tony and Michael review it for budget realness. Chris reviews it, then I review it before it comes forward. We can certainly reject this and try to go back out and get some additional bids if that's what y'all would like to do.
No. I'm asking.
Okay.
I'm asking that the
bid
whether the bid has been received a review, not just to the qualitative aspects of it, but to the cost.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Rochelle.
Marty, how much sidewalk is this? How many feet or yards or however we measure?
Wesley, do you have a quick? Come on up, Wesley.
And while he's coming up, I have another question. Because it is CDBG, is it possible for us to look at bringing some of this work in-house? Have we looked at that? I mean, or do we have to have an outside person?
First, the scope and complexity of the work doesn't lend itself to the staff we have available currently to perform something like this. So let me brag on Wesley and his team just a moment. He gave me this number earlier today, so I wanted to share it since I've got it here. So out of the some 20 T-SPLOST sidewalk program projects that we have funded in T-SPLOST 2021, as of today, 9 of those 20 projects have been completed. And we began collections in April of 22 for that program. So we're in a good place right now. I commend the efforts on Wesley and the sidewalk design team, with the consultant performed, with project managers providing oversight against an overall program budget of about $10.1 million right now. We just issued notice to proceed for 2 others. So things are progressing very well with the process we have in place with consultant design right now, moving projects forward. And some of those projects within those early completions there were what I'd call design light, where we had to acquire a survey. We needed to understand where the right-of-way was, where the utilities are, et cetera, those kinds of things. That used a majority of the cost for some of those smaller projects, as I explained this, and then project management staff, with the staff of the consultant, provided some fairly quick and not too labored study to come up with fairly quick designs that went along with these, what I'll call early completions, these early projects here within the T-SPLOST 2021 program budget. So the in-house design, we use a version of that with these lighter, smaller projects we have, and our staff has leaned in to help with the consultants. Again, we still need the survey work. We need those kinds of things that we don't have the in-house capacity to do. So that's where we are there. Now, specifically to community development block grant, I don't know, and I've never tested the question, whether or not we can use community development block grant funds against staff performing the work. There's usually limitations on that. So as I sit here at a distance with the question on CDBG specifically, I don't know that we can employ staff to render some of this work beyond those things allowed for CDBG under the areas where you can allocate staff dollars. So that's an open question that I would have to research and get back to you on.
Can we take a look at what we have ahead of us and what we've done in the past and see if it would be cost effective to have our own designers our own design staff to do the bigger projects. I understand the smaller projects,
Well-
but I know we can't do, we have to, the surveys, I understand we'd have to
Right.
sub out.
I'd be glad to explore it for council, if you like. I will tell you that I think our understanding from talking to the particular consultants that were potential contenders on this work, the work, there didn't seem to be enough work to warrant their exposure with federal rules, et cetera, for the size of work contemplated here, is the sense we got. And I would tell you, as I look at our overall sidewalk program, that we'd have to ensure that we find enough work throughout the life of a program to make an investment in staff that has to be trained, that then has to be augmented with surveyors, augmented with potentially structural engineers, hydrologists, all those other folks, to make it worthwhile to pursue that as an in-house effort. We could certainly investigate it, but it'll probably drive some minimum staffing size. It wouldn't be one designer and off we go. So there'd be some minimum staffing size to that. And then we'd have to see that there's a program that could actually keep that staff fully and gainfully employed while we pursue that. So there's several questions that we'd have to address along the way. I don't want to paint you an answer tonight, but we'd be glad to explore it. But I would also tell you that we've got to investigate some other. And then there's the idea of we'd still need to augment with surveyors as we go along. And that's a significant part of the cost within all of this work I talk about here. So that reduces the dollars available to fund staff for in-house design as well. So as your desires, we could certainly take that for a further study if you like. Be glad to look at it for you.
Well, in this particular case, because it's CDBG, because it's a federal program, you need people who are expert in delivering these kinds of projects. And that becomes important because if you don't follow every rule, and there's a book that thick of rules that go with the CDBG program, if you don't follow every one of them, you can inadvertently miss one of them, and they will come back to you and say, we want that money back. So you've got to have people who understand this program, who've delivered projects of this type before. Otherwise, and we've already had to pay money back to GDOT because one of our partners failed to follow all the rules. So we've learned a very expensive lesson, and particularly these complex federal projects. You better have somebody who knows how to deliver these projects and understand the rules. Otherwise, you could get into a situation where you're having to repay all this money. And none of us want to be in that situation. Mr. DiGiulio.
Wait, I wanted to find out about how much sidewalk.
I think it's approximately 2,000 feet, about half a mile of sidewalk.
Thank you.
Mr. DiGiulio.
Building off of what you were just talking about, Mr. Mayor, do the people we hire, do they indemnify us in case they do miss these rules and the government comes back after us for some money back? Are we indemnified by the people who are supposedly experts in this area?
There's a standard of care we expect of our design professionals when we hire that I think further insulates the city.
Well, they also have to carry errors and omissions insurance.
Yes.
And that would be where the indemnification would come. Mr. Lee, do you have any other insights?
That's it. The professionals, the contractor brings a payment and performance bond, but the architects, the designers, the errors and omissions covered.
And I would add to, Mayor, your comments about regulatory compliance, et cetera. When we, especially in the Community Development Block Grant Program, where I will tell you by contrast, when we work with the Georgia Department of Transportation on FHWA-funded projects, we have pretty regular access to pretty good guidance. I'll put it that way. By contrast with Community Development Block Grant, not a big staff, not so heavily engaged in advising us as we move through this. We rely on the consultant a lot. When particularly when Wesley and I reached a fairly significant, what I call environmental milestone on the CDBG project we now have constructed on Roswell Road south of 285, we were seeking guidance from community development the community development block grant staff to help us with, are we good? Can we sign now, et cetera. I still wasn't satisfied. I was pulling their audit checklist off of their site. I finally found this cache of audit and inspection checklist, and I started pulling them down and going through all the inspectable criteria they had there to see if, by chance, we've missed anything as I looked at the documents we'd prepared. And in that case, we had a consultant that had experience helping us as well, and still the guidance was just a little skimpy.
Well, there'll be one person in District 4 who understands all the nuances of this, but trying to find out who that person is from the CDBG or from the HUD staff
yes, sir.
is oftentimes a challenge. But if you screw up, that person will know where to find you.
Exactly.
Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Marty. So just formerly being in the business of being the engineer of record on projects, I've watched the variety of projects that we have come through here, and there's so much variation, there's so much uniqueness to all these projects. The bigger companies can go into their pool of engineers and pull this particular project. X has half a dozen things that are special and unique to that project. The bigger engineering companies can go find somebody in their organization, pull them in, and they work on this project until it's completed. Then the next project comes in, there may be another whole set of skills required. For us to do, especially some of these more complex projects, we would have to have all those resources in-house, which I just don't know how efficient that would be. So I would suggest we go slow when we discuss whether or not the city wants to be the engineer of record on some of these projects. There may be some basic projects that we could do this with and maybe save ourselves a little bit of money, but you're paying for the expertise of these big companies.
Can I say one more thing?
So that's first observation. Marty, the only question I have from all of this is we're spending 24% of the $3 million on this contract, which doesn't include construction. Have you guys had the opportunity, and can you look to see if the remaining monies cover the construction costs of this? It may be too early to tell, but that means we've got to have 76%.
That's what we believe based on our initial budget figures. So before
you could
our
get it all in
projects-
what's left.
Before our staff stepped out on acquiring the design consultant, they scoped this work. They looked at level of cost associated with construction, cost associated with potential right-of-way acquisition, et cetera. So they built some initial budget figures against all of these elements of project delivery as they stepped out to it. So yes, sir, to that end, with the amount of study they've been able to perform thus far, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm not saying that we should jump into anything, but my point is that we're doing a half a mile. We're building a half a mile, and it's $700 and something thousand for our design. So I can't remember how many miles of sidewalks we're planning on doing this year, but if we just take those numbers and take a look at how much we're spending, we could probably hire, if we decided to do it, maybe one or two really good engineers that are experienced. That's all. I just want us to just do that, is just take a look at it. That's
Again, Councilwoman, I'll be glad to investigate. It's going to be getting the right skill set on staff.
Right.
Because the other challenge is going to be bringing somebody on that has those kinds of skills, if you can compete to get them, and then keeping them gainfully employed with adequate design work to keep them in the position here. So that's the other challenge we face with.
Well, building sidewalks here is a lot more challenging than it is in Dallas, Texas, where it's all flat and you just, you lay the concrete. If you don't design the concrete and everything to pour correctly, you've got concrete running down the hill. So they are more, because of the topography around here, these projects that seem simple to everybody else are a little bit more complex due to the geography that we're trying to deal with. So it's, when people hear how much we're paying for sidewalks in other parts of the country, they're like, wow, that seems expensive, until they look at the topography that we're having to deal with. And then it becomes very plain why some of our sidewalk projects are more expensive. But thank you. Ms. Mueller.
So I just think we should be mindful. We just passed our budget. Let's not jump in to be doing an amendment already for hiring staff. So that's just if we wanted to bring this forward, probably should have brought something like this forward during the budget process. So going forward, we can look at it, but
And
maybe
as
later
I
on.
stand here tonight, I didn't have that in mind to propose in-house design stuff. So, yes, ma'am.
All right.
Bad idea, ma'am. But
Any further
we'll
questions?
investigate it.
Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-152, approving a contract award to Kimley Horn and Associates to perform engineering design consultant services related to the CDBG Connecting Sidewalks Project, Northwoods Drive, Long Island Drive, and Hope Road sidewalks. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Sorry, my pages are sticking together. This is 2024-153. Consideration to approve a contract award to AWP Inc., doing business as AWP Safety and Traffic Sign Maintenance, Traffic Control, Road Closure, and Special Event Services, and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract. Presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and council, in this case, on March 13th of this year, the city advertised its request for contractor qualifications for the services defined above. And the deadline for submission of responses to the RFQC was April 12th, 2024. Staff reviewed those responses and determined that one contractor was qualified to perform the services, that being area-wide protective or AWP safety. They submitted at that time a bid of some $460,721.90, which was very close and in line with staff estimates for that level of effort based on historical pricing we've received. By the way, AWP is our incumbent. It is our current service provider for those sign services, preceded by another contractor prior to AWP's contract award some 5 years ago. This was the end of that 5-year renewal contract. So with that said, there are also other features associated with this contract. There is the base bid award, which is the question we're asking of you tonight, at $460,721.90, as well as an allowance of some $50,000 per year, which is budgeted for emergency on-call and call-out services, and an additional $100,000 available to purchase materials against the work required. Those are dollars that are expended if needed, not automatically automatically expended to the contractor in this case. And so with that, tonight we recommend an award to AWP Services in the amount of $460,721.90 as the base for the next 5 years, with an annual renewal contract available to continue those services from now through the next 5 years.
You've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul,
Dr. Kelly.
I move approval of agenda item 2024-153, contract award to AWP for traffic sign maintenance, traffic control, road closure, and special events services, and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract.
We have a motion by Dr. Kelly. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Dr. Kelly, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve agenda item 2024-153, a contract award to AWP for traffic sign maintenance, traffic control, road closures, special event services. Any discussion?
I just want to
Dr. Kelly.
make sure that we are, we're approving the 610, right? The 610, 721, not the 460.
It's 460 in this case. 460. The contract,
We're approving the 460. Is that what we're doing?
Kristen, if you could clarify.
Thank you.
here.
Thank
So,
you very much.
So for services starting on July 1, it is their base bid plus our allowance of $150,000.
So the total PO amount
Yeah, the
will be-
total purchase order amount.
Excuse me, sorry.
Yes,
So that's the 610.
correct.
That's correct.
Well, that's what we're approving.
Sorry. So their contract services of work, that's the cost for their staff to be here 5 days a week in the city of Sandy Springs, plus be available for emergency call-outs. Pardon.
And this number is for the 5 years, or?
It's for the 1 year,
Oh, it's 1 year and then
Yes,
it
ma'am.
renews.
renewable.
Got it. All right, thanks.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2024-153, approving a contract award to AWP for traffic sign maintenance, traffic control, road closures, and special event services. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-154, consideration of approval of an award to Reedwick LLC to construct the Roswell Road SR9 at Lake Placid Drive Signal Project, and to authorize city manager to execute the contract, presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Right. Mayor and council, in this case, this intersection improvement upgrades the traffic signal infrastructure and pedestrian crossing features at the Lake Placid Roswell Road intersection. In this case, changing out what you'll see as strain poles and wire up there to support the traffic signal system now. And this going to new mast arms, overhead signage, and the appropriate pedestrian crossing features incorporated into the intersection design. And as well, I believe you recollect, this is one of our higher pedestrian use crossings in the entire city here, with a significant population on foot or using public transportation as well here at Lake Placid and Roswell Road. So with that said, on April 7th, 2024, the city issued an invitation for bid. Bids were received on April 30th, on May the 20th, 2024, from three bidders. Reedwick LLC was our low bidder at $358,043. Reedwick has successfully performed other signal-related projects for the city of Sandy Springs. Amshiv Construction at $463,000, and NGT Group, a contractor we have not used before, who submitted a bid and a price of $738,277. Upon review of the bids and the responses, staff recommends award to Reedwick in the amount of $358,043 to execute this contract.
You've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
I move adoption of agenda item 2024, approval of a contract to Reedwick LLC as described in the agenda item.
A motion by Mr. Baumann. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we approve agenda item 2024-154, a contract award to Reedwick LLC to construct the Roswell Road SR9 at Lake Placid Drive Signal Project. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
Marty, this is a pretty significant difference. Did you go back to Reedwick and just make sure they got everything covered? And have you guys interviewed them afterwards?
No interview, but in this case, we've got pretty good knowledge on the level of effort associated with mast arm installations. We've had a lot of projects with them here of late.
With Reedwick?
And we've had good work with Reedwick as well.
Okay.
So between other signal installations we've done here and the work history we have with Reedwick, we have confidence in the numbers.
Okay.
Mr. DiGiulio.
Marty, you were dead on when you said this is one of the busiest intersections or busiest crosswalks in the city. Because, I mean, the apartment complex are right there, people are on foot, et cetera, et cetera. Prado's right there. When is this going to happen?
With award tonight, I think we'll probably be in a position for a notice to proceed in about, averages go about 30 days. We're going to have some long lead items on this project since it's signal mast arms, et cetera. So we'll probably look at somewhere in the 16-week period or better for delivery of traffic signal gear, especially the mast arms, et cetera. Along the way, the contractor has to develop ped crossings here, get the horizontal work done, as well as prepare the foundations for those new mast arms that need to be installed. So, Kristen, do you recollect total performance period overall for this? Let me take. I think this is probably closer to about 240 days. Let me take a look. So, let's see if it's in the notes here.
Let me just comment that our experience with these materials for signals really hasn't recovered from those supply chain issues during COVID. Quite frankly, yeah, it's 6 to 9 months for some of our materials, and some even longer. Yeah, we We just recently, as an example, ordered a pole base to repair something that was hit on one of our decorative pole bases, and it was, I think, close to 10 months for delivery, just for a base.
So I'd be glad to send you all an update on the estimated performance period. We know that. I don't have it with me tonight. But generally, it's going to be a significant long lead. These are long lead time materials here with the traffic signal gear. So that's got to happen as well along the way.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2024-154, approving a contract award to Redwick LLC, construct the Roswell Road at Lake Placid Drive Signal Project. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-155, consideration of a resolution to approve a memorandum of understanding with Right Site Health Physicians LLC to provide on-site telemedicine services to patients through existing 911 providers. This is presented by Patrick Flaherty. He's Section Chief with the Sandy Springs Fire and Rescue.
Mr. Flaherty.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, Chief Sanderson's his apologies for not being here tonight. He swore to me the only reason he's on vacation is because his wife made him go. So I come before you tonight to recommend that the Mayor and City Council approve a resolution for the Memorandum of Understanding with Right Side Health Physicians LLC. This would allow us to provide telehealth services using our existing 911 providers when they respond to what are classified as low acuity and non-life-threatening emergencies to better serve the patients that we are called on to provide medical care for.
All right, you've heard the report of the Section Chief. What's the desire of council? Mr. Paulson.
I move approval of agenda item 2024-155, approve an MOU with Right Side Health Physicians LLC to provide on-site telemedicine services to patients through existing 911 providers.
I have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2024-155, a memorandum of understanding with Right Side Health Physicians to provide on-site telemedicine services to patients through the existing 911 providers. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
So there are no costs on this memo. So tell me about the costs of this service.
So there's no cost to the city. The patients will be billed through private insurance as if it were a telehealth visit with their physician. If they do not have insurance or Medicare, then there is no cost for the services provided. They will not be refused if they do not have means of payment. Right Side has a beneficiary act associated that helps cover the costs for those patients who may not have insurance.
Okay, and then we call Right Side when we get to the incident?
That is correct. The 911 call would come in as normal. It would be classified as normal. We would send all units as we do every day. Upon our providers arriving on scene, if it meets the certain criteria that Right Side can help with, then we would contact the ER physician through telehealth, through the existing equipment that we already have on the trucks, iPads, iPhones, things of that nature, and allow them to speak directly with the physician. The benefit to this is fully 30% of the calls that we run every week for EMS are classified by definition through emergency medical dispatch as non-life-threatening, non-acute calls. What this allows us to do is those patients generally do not require an ER visit. Under current state law, if you get on an ambulance, you can only go to an emergency room. What this allows them to do is speak with an emergency room, a licensed Georgia physician directly, who can then make a determination on whether an emergency room is the appropriate level of care for them, or is there some other benefit or some other alternate level of care that they can provide. This can be calling in a prescription to their existing pharmacy. It can be working with their personal physician to get them seen by a specialist. It can be transferring them to urgent care, and they will help provide alternative transportation through Lyft, Uber, other ride-sharing facilities to get them to those locations. The average ambulance bill can be northwards of $2,000 plus the associated ER fees. This is a significant financial burden compared to most insurance companies don't even have a copay for a telehealth visit.
Huh. And also they're 24-hour
yes,
service?
They're 24-hour services, so they are available 7 days a week, 24 hours.
This sounds like a great addition to our first responder
You
system.
may recall during our discussions about our ambulance service contract, we discussed this alternative method of being to help avoid unnecessary transports to the ER. And this is a component of that particular agreement, which will help reduce our costs and the costs of the taxpayers for providing ambulance service. So is that an accurate?
Completely accurate, sir.
Okay. Ms. Rochelle.
So can someone call Right Site and not have the ambulance come?
So this is the first part of the implementation of the program. The second part of the implementation of the program would be actually moving Right Site into the dispatch center. So certain types of calls, when they have been EMD'd in the dispatch center, I will use the example of a sore throat. That call could, before it is actually dispatched, sending units down the road, we could transfer them to an ER physician, allow them to speak with the physician. At that point, the ER physician could make a recommendation on whether a 911 response is appropriate or not.
I love that. When are we going to do that?
We're currently working on the legal aspect of it with Chatcom's legal counsel right now. We hope to have it implemented as soon as possible.
Thanks.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-155, a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with Right Site Health Physicians to provide on-site telemedicine services to patients through the existing 911 providers. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-156, consideration of a resolution to approve a lease agreement between the City of Sandy Springs and Motorola Solutions, Inc. for police portable two-way radio equipment, accessories, and services for the Sandy Springs Police Department, to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. Presented by Police Department Major Dan Nabel.
Major Nabel.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. What you have before you is a recommendation of approval of a lease agreement with Motorola Solutions Incorporated for the procurement of 211 portable two-way radios and the accessories, and to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. The city currently operates 211 portable radios on the North Fulton radio system, and we are a member of the North Fulton Regional Radio System Authority. In 2023, we engaged in a request for proposal process to replace those 211 portable two-way radios because in December of this year they will reach the end of their life. They'll still work, but we won't be able to get them repaired. If something happens, we won't be able to get them upgraded to have new features and whatnot. The next slide, please. In November of 23, we issued a request for proposal, seeking the proposals, and two vendors responded, L3 and Motorola, and the proposals were evaluated by a committee. There was Deputy Chief Chandler, myself, Director Patrick, and the Technology Sergeant, Nick Smith, and we went over all of the items in the RFP as expected in all standard RFPs with the various criteria. And we gave them scores in which 3 of the 4 categories Motorola Solutions scored the highest. And the 4th category, which was the cost, Motorola did not. But the overall score, Motorola scored 88.88 and L3 scored 78.25. The reason that, we have reviewed the reasonableness of this, and we're going to recommend that we go with the Motorola contract, even though L3's bid was lower, for several reasons. One, the main reason is L3 did not provide some exact information requested that had to do with how they were going to be able to offer a transition to incorporate their system into the existing Motorola system, into the existing North Fulton radio system, into the towers, and how all those things work together. They weren't specific enough on how much that would cost, how much equipment it would take, and how long it would take. There were some additional issues, including There's some training issues. Motorola training is going to be at no cost to us, right on site with no travel or anything like that. L3 was going to require some travel, was going to require some people who are already trained on the Motorola system to become retrained on a separate system, which is going to take a lot of time and a lot of money, and would be some expected additional costs to what L3 originally proposed. Some other smaller issues, but still issues nonetheless. For example, there's a provision in there that when the radio gets to what we call a dead spot, or a place where the radio system doesn't work properly, that the radio would switch automatically to use the LTE cellular network. Well, with the Motorola system, that happens automatically. With the other system, the officer has to stop and do something to the radio to make it switch over, which might not be the greatest situation if the officer was in a situation where the officer was having to protect themselves or engaged in some dynamic incident. They don't have time to grab that radio, figure out which button to push to get it to where it'll work so they can call. Additional things is during the warranty period, we have no additional costs with Motorola if the devices were to need to be repaired or upgraded or whatnot, whereas with L3 there's some additional costs as well. And Motorola has many avenues of customer service, technical support in a management center that the other offerer did not have. So based on the evaluation and the criteria provided, the evaluation committee determined that the proposal submitted by Motorola represents the best for the police department and the best value for the two-way radio solutions for the city, and we recommend that contract be awarded to Motorola. It's a proposed lease amount which would be $1,794,444 over 5 years, which makes the 1 year proposed amount $358,888.80. That money has already been approved or has already been accounted for in the budget that you approved earlier this evening.
You've heard the report of the police major. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul?
Dr. Kelly.
I move approval of agenda item 2024-156, lease agreement between the City of Sandy Springs and Motorola Solutions for police portable two-way radio equipment, accessories, and services for the Sandy Springs Police Department, and to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
I have a motion by Dr. Kelly. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Dr. Kelly, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve agenda item 2024-156, the resolution approving the lease agreement between the City of Sandy Springs and Motorola Solution for police portable two-way radios. Any discussion?
One question.
Dr. Kelly.
Will this be coming to us annually for the next 5 years? Is that how this will work in terms of business?
It would be included in the budget.
I believe that's the way it's struck.
And will we see an item like this every year?
You will see it just like the
Every
next
fiscal
item
year?
you have tonight is the Axon contract. It will be the same thing. It will be included in technical services for the police department.
Okay, but we are committed to 5 years?
It's subject to annual appropriations.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. DiGiulio.
Dan, we talked a few minutes ago about the backlog of some of the things that the city's been ordering, with the chain. I believe you said our current contract ends at the end of this year. Are we going to be able to get all these new radios, everything delivered and in service on time for that?
So what ends at the end of this year is the service life of our current radio. It's just that after December 31st, we won't be able to get these current radios repaired or replaced.
So Motorola's not going to service them any further after December 31st?
Correct. And we have had a couple of units, 4 I think, that we've used for testing and evaluation in the last few months. And Motorola has not given us any indication that there's going to be any supply chain issues in getting these radios to us in a timely manner.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-156, a resolution approving a lease agreement between the City of Sandy Springs and Motorola Solutions for police radios. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-157, consideration of a resolution to approve a new master services and purchasing agreement with Axon Enterprises, presented by Major Dan Nabel.
Mr. Nabel.
For this item, we recommend approval of a new master services and purchasing agreement with Axon to acquire new hardware and software, as well as to update existing services over the course of 5 years, and authorize the city manager to execute same. The City of Sandy Springs has worked with Axon since 2008, and the police department currently uses Axon as a supplier for our body-worn cameras, our in-car cameras, the Taser 7, and some software that called evidence.com that allows us to keep many of these recordings, as well as some other third-party recordings and whatnot, on the in the cloud-based solution. And those services end on January 26. Now, we would like to terminate the existing contract upon completion of year 4, which would be July 15th of this year, and enter into a new 5-year agreement. There's a couple reasons for that. One is we want to consolidate all of these various Axon products and services that we have into one agreement. And Axon has recently acquired a company called Fusus, which we currently have a contract with, which is a data management platform. And since they've acquired Fusus, it would be much easier to have everything all in one nice, neat contract. The new contract will also allow us to upgrade the Taser 7 to the Taser 10, which is a more effective conducted energy weapon. We will be able to add the automatic license plate readers to our current in-car cameras. If you recall, the last time I was before this body, we had an example of how we identified a robbery suspect using the ALPRs. Those are all stationary. Well, we'll be able to enhance our ALPR by having them essentially in all the police cars that are out there. So we're adding to those capabilities as well. We need cameras for our interview rooms, both hard interviews and soft interviews in the new police headquarters. This will include that as well. It includes an upgrade to our response to resistance reporting to make sure that we remain transparent when we do have to respond to some resistance that we encounter. We need to upgrade the storage capacity that's in the cloud so that when we either have body-worn camera recordings, or if we go out to a victim, say, who has had a robbery at their business, and they say, well, here's video from my business camera, we can keep that as well without having to worry about not having enough space. And then, as I said, to create a nice, clean contract with all of those things in it instead of all of these separate pieces that we have now. And that is our proposal. So if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those.
All right, you've heard the report of the police major. What's the desire of council? Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve agenda item, where are we? 2024-157. Is that, yeah, approve a new master services and purchasing agreement with Axon Enterprises, Inc.
Got a motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we approve the agenda item 2024-157, approve a new master services agreement and purchasing agreement with Axon Enterprises. Any discussion?
I have a question.
All right, Ms. Rochelle is the maker of the motion.
This is about something else. So I'm a runner, and I almost get hit a lot by people that are turning right on red because they're not coming to a full stop. And I just heard about something called full stop cameras. Have you heard of that?
I'm not familiar with those, but I'll be
It's
glad
where
to research.
they take pictures of at stoplights for cars that aren't stopping completely, and several cities are using them. And I was wondering if we could check into that.
Sounds like it might be something similar to an automated red light camera. I'll be more than happy to check on that. Did you say they're called full stop?
Full stop cameras, yeah. Because there's so many people that just don't stop at red lights when they're turning right. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Ms. Mueller and then Mr. Paulson.
So I had a question about the cameras. So there's 4 for the interview rooms at the new HQ. So does that cost get, I mean, it's in this contract, but does that get tagged to the overall cost for the new building? And
I don't believe it does.
No, they're included in this because of the ongoing maintenance that will be covered through the continued contract with Axon.
Okay.
Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Officer. So, question for you. This contract goes from 926 to 990 something.
Yes, sir.
Based on the memo. But you also said that the separate charge for the FUSIS is not going to be a separate charge anymore. That's rolled into the new number.
That's right. So are you referring to year one being different than 2,
yeah.
3, 4? Okay. So the FUSIS contract, what we wanted to do was cut it off. We've only used a third of it, of what we committed to. So if we cut it off now, just get them to invoice for the part we've used, and then the part that we still owed FUSIS will now pay to Axon, which accounts for that difference in year one. I believe that's correct. Is that correct, Mr. Lee? Yeah.
Okay, so the 992 is actually also includes this separate FUSIS money that what goes on top of the 926 that was
We were
last year's
already
contract.
obligated to
Yeah,
FUSIS. We're just putting it in the Axon contract now instead of this separate FUSIS.
Okay, that's good. And just a quick comment. I had occasion years ago I was visiting my son in Seattle, and it turns out there's one of these stop on red cameras at one of the intersections. And by the way, I was innocent, but it doesn't really matter. My son wound up getting a ticket because I didn't stop at the darn thing. Okay, so unfortunately for all of us, they work quite well, and he wound up. I split it with him because it was his car. But anyway, they're out there and they work pretty well.
I'll
for what
check
it's
on that
worth.
and I'll report back.
It probably will come under the rubric of red light cameras, and the Georgia General Assembly has had a bad habit of starting and stopping the allowance of red light cameras. So I'm not sure whether we're started or stopped at this point in history, but it's we can't use them. All right, that's what I was kind of thinking. That the last act of the legislature wiped out. Yeah, it could. They meet every January, so they could change their mind. All right, any further questions? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2024-157, approving a new master services and purchasing agreement with Axon Enterprises. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-158, consideration and approval of the City of Sandy Springs General Liability Insurance Renewal for FY 2025, presented by City Manager Eden Freeman.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. I am joined this evening.
The answer's in there somewhere.
It is. We're going to try to make this a little clearer for y'all. But I'm joined this evening by Mr. Mike Royal and Mr. Bob Seville, who work with the city as our insurance counselor to help us get the best price possible for our general liability insurance. We started this process I guess it's been about 2 months ago now, and the culmination of our policies and our rates for next year are included in this document that Mr. Seville and Mr. Royal are going to walk you through. The good news is this number is all included in the FY25 budget, which is why we had it on the agenda after the budget was approved. Gentlemen. Thank you.
Mayor Paul, members of the council, thank you for having us this evening. It's my pleasure to join with you. And after all the conversations on government and this, I guess this is very fitting that we're here. I do want to start by really almost just even talking for a moment, because I was here for the budget discussion myself. I've been on that side of the podium many, many, many times on budget and deal with staff. I can tell you, I deal with your staff a lot in my role in risk management for the city of Sandy Springs, and have for several years. And I can tell you when the phone rings and it says Sandy Springs on it, I don't have the apprehension that I do with some of the others. I can't say that about them because I know we're going to have a question or a comment, and it's going to have to do with what's the right thing to do and what's good public policy. Because it's really challenging what they do when you're talking about insurance and risk management. The easy thing to do would be do nothing. Let's don't have any programs, button it up. You can't, but that's not good public policy. That's not the environment you're wanting to build in Sandy Springs. And where we are right now with your renewal, the next one I have is not going to be as pleasant as this one. And the reason is because you do have a professional staff. And I can stand here in front of you and say it with a straight face, not just because the people that work with me on the contract are sitting behind me, but with working with your city attorney, your city manager, and your purchasing department. When we're getting questions about kayaks in the river in a program or something, it's all focused around what's the best thing to do and be good stewards of the city dollars, but where are we at with public policy? And it's been a pleasure to work with y'all because your renewal has been it's a lot of work, but it's still one of the easiest that I've dealt with. Between Mr. Seville and myself, we work with hundreds of governments and municipalities, and in my non-paying job, actually it's just ended on Thursday, was the last day of my tenure on the State Board of Education. But I've served as chairman of budget twice, chairman, vice chairman, and I made a chairman mad one time, and he made me chair of audit. So I'm in the belly of this beast. I see it, and I appreciate y'all's questions, and because I've had them on that side. But I can really tell you, standing here before you tonight, y'all are in good shape. Y'all are insurance. The insurance market is not. It is, some have say it's in chaos, and it is. And there are municipalities very close to here right now that don't have insurance renewals for their 7/1. It's not how much is it going to cost, it's whether we can procure it or not. And they're not in very good situations because they're not run the way that Sandy Springs is run. But in that, I thought I'd go over this and start and go over the spreadsheet. Hopefully you've gotten used to the format a little bit. But the changes, the expiring and proposed, and just go over a few of the differences because price is important, but terms and conditions are very, very, very important. And there's a few that have changed. There's not a lot that's changed, and there's a few. I do want to point out that the major carrier for the general liability, automobile, law enforcement, and public entity has changed. It's Ascot Insurance Company. It's an A-rated 13 carrier by AM Best. The previous carrier is having some challenges in the marketplace. They're actually lower rated than this carrier is for AM Best, but we worked through a MGA that works with municipalities all over the country called Trident, and those people in the seats are the same. We have the same claims management, we have the same underwriters, we have the same people. We don't call 1-800 who cares. We've got excellent dialogue and excellent working relationships with the people. The paper has changed, that is the backing, and the checks will be a little bit different than go out, but the overall program has not changed in the program administrator. Some of the changes that we've had are, if you'll look down on automobile physical damage, the deductibles did change a little bit on the large fire trucks. We're talking about $1 million ladder trucks that y'all have, and those deductibles did increase from $5,000 to $10,000. We did increase the number of units from 370 to 387 total units this year. Going through, we did, Ascot did change on the public entity management liability, your employment practices liability on that. The biggest change isn't on the carrier, but really in one of the terms and conditions of the property insurance. Travelers is remaining the carrier on that, but property insurance has become very, very difficult to obtain when you've got schedules north of $300 million and higher, and different building values in there of such. It is getting very common that we are seeing deductible wind and hail deductibles as a percentage placed on large property schedules, and that's the case here. Last year we had a deductible, wind and hail deductible of $100,000. This year it is a minimum of $100,000 deductible as well, but it is also that's the minimum, but 2% of the building value. That is a significant change in the terms and conditions. We are seeing that number at 5% on a lot of other schedules and values. So we did work with the carrier and to try to limit that down from 5 to 3 to ultimately 2% of that for wind and hail. That's those perils only of wind and hail. Because as you know, you live here, from 285 to the bottom of the Appalachian Mountains, we've been having an enormous amount of wind and hail events over the last year, straight line winds and a lot of hail. Many carriers, one of the largest carriers in commercial insurance came in my office the other day and announced that any property risk in Cobb County is getting an automatic percentage deductible added to it, no exceptions. So you're not getting picked on in this. This is an industry-wide thing, and we've done our best to try to negotiate the best terms and conditions we can for Sandy Springs on that. This does include the new fire station and fleet center. This does not include the new public service building yet. It's under construction with that. And then the other real significant change this year, and this is another testament to the professionalism of Sandy Springs and its staff, and talking with the city manager and going over some of the terms and conditions, we increased the cyber security insurance limit to $10 million this year. It was $5 million last year. For those of you who have been here a few years, know you used to have $5 million. It went down. We weren't even able to get higher, and it went back up to $5 million because of the things I don't want to get into a lot in here in the public meeting of the processes and things that Sandy Spring has done to protect itself and the taxpayers and citizens. But because of what you have done, now we're able to procure a limit of $10 million. There are many municipalities that aren't able, it's not what does it cost, they're not able to get it. And you don't have to look far in the newspaper to see that government entities and municipalities are a favorite target of bad actors in the cyber world. So also we did flip. Travelers became the primary carrier on this year, and the carrier you had last year became 5x of 5, so 10. So it's stacked, 5 million, 5 million. And I think that is a prudent risk management strategy and the right thing to do for the city. And we were able to get the primary limit of $5 million at a less expensive premium as well this year on that. So other than that, there's not a whole lot of changes on here because there is a lot of stability in this program. There's not much stability in the marketplace. And with that, I'll be really glad to answer any questions.
All right, you've heard the report of our insurance advisor. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
I move adoption of agenda item 2024-158, approval of our general liability insurance renewal for fiscal year 2025.
We have a motion by Mr. Baumann. Is there a second? Second. Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve agenda item 2024-158, City of Sandy Springs general liability insurance renewal for FY25. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Just a couple of questions.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you for your presentation. Thank you for your service at the state level. Big picture, are we dealing at the municipal level with the tort reform or the tort issue that exists in Georgia that is uniquely bad around the state? Is that affecting us as well as we are in our private affairs?
It's affecting everyone, yes, sir.
Okay, so that issue is something that might appropriately be on our radar screen. I don't know what the magnitude of that is. Can you give us a percentage that is, that's putting this market into such volatility? Can you give us some order of magnitude that issue is affecting this particular renewal?
Well, one of the leading insurance industry publications is named Georgia the #1 judicial hellhole to do business,
Right.
Surpassing for over 3 years in a row. So it's hard to say how much does that impact the city of Sandy Springs. But
it would be uniquely liability, right?
It would be uniquely liability, more premises liability probably than auto, because you're protected by statute on the maximum liability for your auto. So that does give you a buffer there. Because when I'm in here looking at the automobile, where can we save money and all that, your cost per auto compared to a commercial entity that's out there without the statute protection that municipalities has is paying much more.
Second question, maybe for Eden or Tony. how much are we in our budget setting aside the deductible / self-insurance component of these policies, meaning we should have enough history to know that we're spending X dollars on deductibles. Candidly, I don't know what that number is buried in these numbers. That's maybe not one I picked up on. Can you tell us how much we're spending, and has that been adjusted to account for some of these increases, these nickel-dime situations that we're going to self-insure, otherwise known as a deductible?
Yes. So in general, those come from our contingency accounts because we don't have as much of that as many other municipalities do. But we can get a full accounting of the last 3 years for you.
Yeah, it would be interesting, frankly, at some point,
Sure.
maybe noted as a question for next year's budget, but I would be interested in, your total insurance cost is not just premium, it's what you end up paying, and there are situations, I don't have any reason to suspect this being one, but I've been around it in the private sector, where you choose to self-insure because it reduces your premiums, but you better be setting aside money.
Yes.
I really have no way to know what the situation here is as it relates to that. So just pencil that for a future
We do, and we're very cognizant of that. Actually, the last conversation that Ms. Freeman and I had before this meeting was on that very topic. Because this is somewhat new to us, that the 2% is coming in. It's not new to the industry. I can tell you that I'm already in my head working on next year, because I don't like that.
Yeah, more often than not, people tend to think about our risk above policy limits. Really, the bigger question is how much are you paying on the deductible side, the self-insurance component.
The good news for Sandy Springs is that many of your buildings, including this one and what you're coming on, are what we refer to as HPR, highly protected risks, and you have very little occurrence of smaller claims. If you have one, it's going to be a big one. But your buildings and what you're doing and the style and manner of which you're constructing them is very wise and very good.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-158, approval of the City of Sandy Springs General Liability Insurance Renewal for FY25. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the
Thank
next
you.
item.
Agenda item number 2024-159, consideration of resolution to amend the City of Sandy Springs purchasing policy. This is presented by Mayor Rusty Paul.
When we started the city, and I know Mr. DeJugo will recall this, we gave the city manager $250,000 in spending cap because we were setting up the city, and he needed that kind of flexibility to help us get the city underway. When Mr. McDonough left, I had some concerns about anybody having that level of unsupervised spending level, and he and I talked, and we agreed that probably $150,000 would be adequate to be able to allow the city to operate efficiently. And of course, we all put a lot of trust in our city staff, but no more than we put in our city manager. So we set it at our previous city manager at $150,000. What we've, as Mr. DeGiulio eloquently pointed out earlier tonight, we've gone through a period of rapid inflation, and the ability to $150,000 just doesn't go as far as it used to go. So I am proposing that we raise the city manager's purchasing authority to $200,000. I think that accommodates, kind of puts us back in the general range of where we were before from a value perspective. And allows the city manager to use her discretion on a lot of the smaller items that come through that don't necessarily need city approval. One of the things that I think is always important, this body has, by its charter, the responsibility for overseeing the expenditure of city monies. And so one of the things that has been discussed, and I think is appropriate, is that the city manager report to council, at least on a semi-annual basis, any exercise of that discretionary spending, just as a report, so that council knows what type of spending has been been authorized by the city manager under this authority. I think that's prudent. I think that no matter how much we trust our staff, and we trust them implicitly and explicitly, it's still an important. It's important for council to know how the taxpayer dollars are being expended. So with that, I will propose that we approve the resolution amending the City of Sandy Springs purchasing policy to give the city manager a $200,000 spending authority by statute. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
I move approval of agenda item 2024-159, resolution to amend the City of Sandy Springs purchasing policy for the city manager to $200,000.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we approve agenda item 2024-159, a resolution amending the City of Sandy Springs purchasing policy. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2024-159, resolution amending the City of Sandy Springs purchasing policy. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-160. This is consideration of a resolution to approve a Fourth Amendment to the existing intergovernmental agreement between the cities of Sandy Springs and Johns Creek for the activation of the Joint Public Safety and Judicial Facilities Authority and the provision of 911 communication services, and to authorize the mayor to execute the amendment. This is presented by SSPD Major Dan Nabel.
Major Nabel.
Good evening once again. As you know, in October of 2008, the City of Sandy Springs, the City of Johns Creek entered into a IGA to create what is commonly known as Chatcom. That we need to renew that agreement for 5 more years is what we're proposing. And we're also proposing to amend Article 4 regarding the capitalization and pledge of the revenue. And we're going to do that based on 2023 numbers and based on 3 years of call volume. But you'll notice we're going to use 2019, 2022, and 2023 because, as we talked about before, those years 2020 and 2021 with the COVID response, that's probably not going to be some really accurate numbers as far as what we can expect on a yearly basis. From there, we'll continue with the 3% annual escalator for the years of 2026 through 2029. And I believe that is everything. Yes, that's everything. So if anybody has any questions about the agreement, I'll be glad to answer them, but essentially we're just extending what we're already doing.
You've heard the report of the major. What's the desire of council? Mr. DiGiulio. We have a motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2024-160, a Fourth Amendment to the existing intergovernmental agreement between the cities of Sandy Springs and Johns Creek for the Public Safety and Judicial Facilities Authority and the provision of 911 communication services. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
What was it last year? What was the dollar amount last year?
I don't have the dollar amount last year. I have the dollar amount for fiscal year 25 is $3,500,000.
I still remember it being that much, but I don't know what it is.
I'm not sure. Ms. Carlisle can get that.
Isn't this partially compensated by a telephone tax, 911 tax fee, whatever you call it? So this is partially funded. Every time you make a phone call or pay your phone bill, there's a line item that includes the 911 that we get to help offset the cost of operating this facility.
I get it. I'm just curious. What was last year's?
Probably 3% less, wouldn't it?
We have seen some growth here, and we're currently in the process of working on the new budget for Chatcom, which actually doesn't take effect until September 1. So while the IGA is on the same fiscal year, the contract with IXP to provide the service expires on August 30th. So we'll be talking more about that over the next few weeks before we bring that forward. And Tony and I actually, and Major Nabel, had a good conversation this morning with the folks from IXP about their proposed budget costs for the next 5 years, because one of the things that we like to do is to project these costs out over a 5-year period so that we don't have those surprises. We're also looking at the level of service that is received by the member cities, which is Johns Creek and Sandy Springs, as well as the subscriber cities, which is Dunwoody and Brookhaven. And there will need to be some rebalancing that happens for the contributions that come from some of the cities. But we're working through that, and I should have more on that in the next couple of weeks to share with you all.
I think that's fantastic. So what did we pay for this last year?
Tony has it.
For Johns Creek?
No, for our cost of $3.5 million for this coming year. What was it last year?
Our portion was $3,410,000. Our portion.
So it's up 90 G's. Okay. Thank you. That's all I wanted.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2024-160, approving a Fourth Amendment to the existing IGA between Sandy Springs and Johns Creek for the Joint Public Safety and Judicial Facilities Authority and provision of 9/11 communication services. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. Moving to reports, I've got a few quick things to talk about. One, I think council knows, and some others know, that I've just returned from 7 days in Israel. It was a very eye-opening, heartbreaking in a lot of ways, moving in many ways, trip to a very troubled part of the world. As I think most of everyone knows, we have a sister city relationship with a cluster of communities in the north. I was able to get together with some of those folks while I was there, though I wasn't allowed to go up there because that was a more dangerous part of Israel right now, more so. I did have the opportunity to go down into the Gaza area, and I could hear the sounds of war. We were that close. We were within 2 miles of Gaza, going through the kibbutz and the concert site where the greatest slaughter, massacre, whatever term you choose, was occurring. Talked to survivors, talked to family members, talked to families of hostages, and talked to mayors and city officials in cities like Sderot and Ofakim that were also underreported. The impact of that October 7th on their communities. If you were to walk the streets of Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, you wouldn't, just looking, would not know that a war was going on. But if you talk to people, it's clear. There are two things that came away. One is that they're very concerned, but also they're very determined to protect themselves and to make sure that something like October 7th never happens again. There's no question that the Israeli government is under a lot of pressure internationally for a ceasefire. It's under a lot of pressure internally to not come home until the job's done. And so I talked to mayors of cities that lost police officers, firefighters. 2 of these cities, their first attack was on the police headquarters. They took over police headquarters, and they started calling police officers in, and as they arrived, they were shot. Or, as one video I saw, they fired a rocket-propelled grenade at point-blank range into a vehicle carrying a firefighter reporting to work. The people are told over there when they hear the sirens, if you're driving, get out of your cars and lie down, because the shrapnel goes up, not horizontal. They showed videos of people doing exactly what they were told to do, and in the meantime, as they lay there on the ground, they were shot. One situation, a mother realized what was happening, grabbed her child, and started running, and she and the child were shot. I saw the video. I talked to family members in the kibbutz, a beautiful community of about 1,000 people. Everybody had an identical house, as you would expect in a kibbutz. Beautiful, terracotta roofs, small houses, maybe 5 or 6 rooms, but a beautifully landscaped area. It was an agricultural area. Virtually every house was burned, oftentimes with the occupants inside. I saw the walls with grenade fragments that turned that house into a killing zone, and high caliber rifle bullet holes in the wall. Visited a medical center. When people started getting wounded, they took them to the medical center. The only person they had to treat them was the dentist and a nurse. And they had one IDF soldier in there who held off Hamas for about 15 or 20 minutes until he ran out of ammunition. And then they overwhelmed him. And they played a recording of the nurse calling her family to say goodbye. And you could hear the gunshots that ended her life. So when I say it was a very heartbreaking and moving visit, I mean that. And this is just touching the tip of the iceberg. My plan is sometime in the next couple of weeks, we'll hold a forum in this room. I'll show photographs so that there's no question about what happened and under the conditions, and to be able to answer any questions that people may have and engage in a dialogue. We saw a video of Hezbollah, the leader of Hezbollah. Israel's intelligence company had intercepted a conversation. I know Mr. Bauman knows this, and others know that we just raised just shy of $500,000 for the hospital in Nahariya. Hezbollah's first move is to come across the border and go into Nahariya and take control from the north, and then build a wall across. And the term they use is everybody north of this line will be human shields. So they stated unequivocally what their strategy is. So we'll have more conversations about that a little bit later. I want to engage the community in a dialogue about what I saw. I mean, and then we can do that. I know Dr. Kelly's going to talk about Juneteenth. Well, I'll make things a little happier before we get to there. We've got that. I know she's worked extremely hard. I told her today I was extremely proud of the work that she and her team have done for tomorrow night, and we'll be able to hold that celebration. We've got the 4th of July, Stars and Stripes coming up. So we'll have that, which is one of the highlights of our summer. The Friday concert this Friday. Many of us will be gone. We'll be at the Georgia Municipal Association Convention, which is this weekend. I'll be there. I know several other members of council will be there as well. So those are some of the highlights, and I would like to recognize Dr. Kelly to talk about the great hard work that her team has done.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. It occurred to me that I have visited 5 cities to invite them to Juneteenth, but I don't think I've spoken about it here in my own city, so I apologize for that. What I wanted to do is just give you a sense of what we have planned for tomorrow. So Juneteenth is our newest addition to the signature event series. And for the first sort of signature event, we have quite a bit in store. This year's event will be tomorrow on June 19th. Which is a Wednesday instead of the weekend, but it's the actual nationally recognized holiday. And we're going to be leveraging 3 spaces on our City Springs campus. We're going to be in the Performing Arts Center for a production from 5:30 to 6:30, which is really like the hottest part of the day, so it's kind of smart to do that. And then we'll be in Buyers Lobby, and there will also be activities on the green. I want to just speak a little bit about the lobby. In the lobby, and actually I think it's partially already set up if anybody wanted to check it out. It's a digital art exhibition, and I came to Madam City Manager probably, 6 or 7 months ago, and just asked if we could find support to take a cohort of high school students and train them through a series of workshops on iPads to to learn the skill of digital art and build pieces. So what you will see in the lobby are pieces that these students have built over the past 3 months. Each piece of art has an augmented reality component built into it, which means that it actually comes alive when you put a camera on it with a certain phone app. Outside on the green, it's not your typical festival experience. There is a series of educational opportunities. I like to call it a differentiated curriculum. If you walk out on the green and you've never heard of Juneteenth, we have something for you. If you walk out on the green and you've been celebrating it your whole life, we have something for you, as well as all the typical DJs and face painting and things like that. So I want to just take a moment now to acknowledge all the folks who were involved and put up with me for the past 8 months. So our city staff, our signature event staff, headed by Anna Nicholas, who we all know and love. Our Performing Arts Center staff, headed by Mr. Bill Haggett. Also from the community, so these are volunteers from the community who have been working bi-weekly for 8 months, like seriously. This is Charles Sharper, Shervosky Moreland, Antoine Sessions, Tasha McCall, our very own Raquel Gonzalez, Michelle McIntosh Ross, Councilwoman Rachel, Sequoia Hanneman, Kristen Porrette, and Shanae LeGrier. Also, we have a range of sponsors that I'm also very fortunate for. So I hope to see everybody tomorrow evening on the green. 5 o'clock. We're telling everybody to get here at 5 o'clock.
Mayor Paul?
Yeah, be here at 5 o'clock, Tibby.
Mr. Bauman?
I'll go brief. Hard acts to follow. I was in D.C. on similar business related to you being in Israel. Thank you for representing us there. I was there in my personal capacity, but while I was there, I did have occasion to visit both of our U.S. Senate offices, so had a chance to say hi to some folks as city council member. So it was good to see people that we've been dealing with on grants and are responsive to people in our district. I also actually happened to meet a member of the Canadian Parliament in the hallway. He was a speaker there, and he saw that I was from Atlanta, and we got to talking, and he was very familiar with Sandy Springs. He has a relative cousin, I think, that was the head of school at Epstein, knew Representative Esther Panich, and he's been here, and I said, well, please come back, and we'll have you over to City Hall. So it sounds like we were all out and about over the last couple of weeks, so it's always good to be representing Sandy Springs and getting the great feedback like I had up there. There were about 80 or 90 people from Atlanta, including probably 50 from Sandy Springs, who are all happy residents.
Well, as I've always said, we're the only city with its own foreign policy. So I will give one bit of good news. I got a note today from Galilee Medical Center. The money we raised, they bought, and I have no idea what these things do, but they sure sound impressive. They to complete the purchase of €1 million biplane imaging system. I didn't know they were imaging biplanes, but whatever that does, it's great. And then also the purchase of an advanced maxillofacial CAT scan. And they are affixing plaques to both of them, thanking Sandy Springs and our residents and the people who are involved for their contribution. So that's it. Nothing else?
Wait, before we go to Tony, I have 2 introductions, if I may.
All right.
First, I'm thrilled to welcome to our team Ms. Carter Long. She is our new Communications and Public Relations Director. Came to us most recently from the Lou Hammond Group, where she served as president of the Atlanta office. Carter's been with us for 7 days, and this was her first council meeting, so she has gotten a full experience tonight with us. We're excited to have Carter with us and look forward to her work for the city for a number of years to come. I'm also excited to welcome a special person that is with us tonight who is participating in the ICMA Senior Fellows Program. It's a partnership with the U.S. Army. Mr. Christopher Thiel is still in the audience, I believe. There he is. Christopher serves as the Director of Plans, Training, Mobilization, and Security at Fort Meade, just outside of Annapolis. Mayor, I look forward to you and Chris having the opportunity to chat a little bit about all things Annapolis and Maryland. But Chris is here for a 5-day intensive to learn about Sandy Springs and how we operate. We are one of 14 cities and counties across the country that were chosen for this program this year, and we are the only one in Georgia. So we're really excited to have Chris here on site with us all week. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Carlisle, talk money.
Okay, real quickly. April 2024 unaudited financials. As of April, we're 10 months into the fiscal year and 83.33% of the budget year. Revenues are at 103.59%, and expenditures are at 77.55%. The overall departments are trending between 33 and 87% and are continued to be managed as expected. That's the financial report for April.
Any questions of the Chief Financial Officer? All right, I have been informed that there is no need for an executive session. So, Mr. DiGiulio, you're up. Mr. DiGiulio. Mr. DiGiulio moves adjournment. Is there a second? Moved and seconded by Mr. Paulson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned at 9:00 the clock. There is no meeting